boys are going to bring the heat today.
As the leader of the Booner Pack, I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the f*** up, boys.
It's pumping right now. It's got my juices pumping, boys.
Welcome to the Crunch Time Sports Show with Jeff, Booner, Lukas. It is January 20th. It's Monday. We have the national championship on while we're going. I mean, football's live. We're going to recap the Lions' loss. The Commanders, terrible. Absolutely terrible. We'll get into Ben Johnson going to the Chicago Bears. Just absolutely terrible. I feel like I got kicked in the nuts twice.
Yeah. It feels well, I typically write down, I take my notes for shows every day. And Mondays, I typically write Victory Monday at the top. And today I just wrote down Loser Monday because we're losers at the end of the day. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks. So it should be a fun show, though. I mean, Ben Johnson, Lions lost. I tweeted it out like the last 48 hours is a teacher. Like 48 hours ago, we were in the 1 seed. Can you guys hear me, by the way? Or am I breaking up?
There you go.
Okay, yeah. You guys kept freezing. But like we were the 1 seed, 15-2, Super Bowl favorites. Everything was like we were living in a beautiful world. And then now all of a sudden, 48 hours later, we lost Ben Johnson to the Chicago Bears. And we have been beaten as an 8.5-point favorite by the Washington Commanders and sitting out of the playoffs for another year. It's tough.
I don't even think loss is the right word. It's just it was an absolute collapse, like from top to bottom, coaching, players. Then you get the next pretty much day after they clean out the locker room, and then it's announced that Ben Johnson is going to the Chicago fucking Bears out of all team, which we'll get into our thoughts on that. But I mean, what like you said, Jeff, what a kick in the nuts, smack in the face, spit in the face, everything. Like Detroit Lions fans, I haven't really looked too far into Twitter, but I could only imagine like what SOL fans are saying right now. So it's a test of times for sure. This is really going to test how much of a Detroit Lions fan that you were. It sucks though, guys. I mean, you look at it and it's just like it was just like a mirage. It seems like that's what it was set up to be. Something that looked like a Super Bowl contender, the 1 seed. They were a fraudulent team this year. As much as it hurts to say, they were frauds.
Can I say this? And you know what? I hate that word. And I think I got a little argument after the show with you guys about calling them frauds. Like, I think frauds is like, I don't know, like the Vikings a couple years ago. Like, I still think the Lions are a really good team. And I think like without injuries, they're probably the best team in football by a mile, and they don't lose that game. So like, I'm not going to make excuses. Like, I'm not doing that. But like frauds, like to me, they still were one of the best teams in football. Like, it's like being like, oh, if the Chiefs lost the Chiefs are still a great franchise right now, and they still have a great team. It's like, it's not a fraudulent team. They just lost a football game at the end of the day. That's how I look at it. Now I'll say, like, you literally just had the most successful season in franchise history. And I've said it a million times. It turned into the most disappointing and heartbreaking season in franchise history. Like, almost unsuccessful, everything about it. Like, that was one of the most heartbreaking moments I've ever had as a sports fan. And it had nothing to do, like Klotz, you say fraud, like it had nothing to do with the frauds, because I don't think you were frauds. The reason that it's so disappointing and heartbreaking is because you knew you weren't frauds. Like, you weren't a fraud. You were the Super Bowl favorite. Like, you're not the Super Bowl favorite and have the success you had this year if you're a fraud. Like, you were out there competing, and you had a day to where you played your worst football of the whole season. That was the worst football you've played in 18, 19 weeks of football. And it happened to be in the divisional round versus a quarterback that's been playing his best football of the season. And it's like, hey, you can't do that in the NFL. Like, that, to me, that doesn't make you a fraud. That's just, hey, that was your worst day of the year, and it happened to be in the playoffs. And you can, if you want to win a Super Bowl, you can't have those slip-ups. You can't. And it's like and this is where the people start blaming. Like Jared Goff, buddy, you can't turn the ball 4 times over 4 turnovers in the playoffs. You can't. Yeah. Coaching, you got out-coached. You got completely out-coached. Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, all 3 of those guys who were supposed to be the 3 best in the NFL, all out-coached. And then you got they were more prepared than you. They played harder than you. Everything about that you need to do in Detroit Lions football that Dan's preached for years, you didn't do any of that on Saturday night. None of it. You turned the ball over a million times. You didn't force turnovers. You got out coached. You got outplayed. Everything. They didn't do any of that. That's where it's like that makes it hurt that much worse.
And the thing I did not see coming was Jared Goff playing as bad as he did. That's something with the sample size we've had of Jared Goff and dating back to last year in that postseason run. Jared Goff played really well last postseason. So I can understand if Jared struggled last postseason and this postseason, we'd have to have an uncomfortable conversation. But we don't have to, because the dude played well last year. But what went wrong when it mattered the most? Key mistakes. But also you allowed 34 points in an NFC championship game. Like the defense needed to be worked on. And Brad Holmes did that. He worked on a defense. He built a pretty good defense. But that's why when we got to the point where there's so many injuries, this is why I kept mentioning that pulse. Now, I couldn't predict Jared Goff. There's no way no one knew that man would play that bad. Okay, that's a whole nother thing. But the defense, I'm not surprised by the defense whatsoever. That defense, what they did yesterday was exactly what we saw 3 or 4 before the Vikings game. The Vikings game, they played excellent, but the stretch of games before that, we even had a conversation, and you guys, we were all on the same page. It's like, that can't happen. That's not a Super Bowl winning defense with all the injuries. Yeah. The defense at the beginning of the year with Hutch and Aleem, Carlton, all these guys, that's a different defense. But what we were seeing to end the year, and then Anzo came back and the defense played pretty well, but it's like that was a facade too, because it's not fair for Anzalone to just put it. You can't expect him to change the whole thing. And then when Amik went down, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That was it. For sure. And, that defense, man, and I know people want to jump all over Goff, which we're going to have plenty of time. We're going to talk about it all today. But the reality is, guys, if Goff would have played, let's say, excellent, and you snuck out of that game in a shootout, there's no way, I'll speak for myself, I'm coming on tonight and saying we're winning it all. There's no way. What I saw out of that defense, there's no way. Saquon would have ran for $180 next week. Yeah. Because he couldn't even stop. He ran for 5 yards a carry.
I just, and I want to say this too, and I give you credit, Jeff, and I know you kept saying on Saturday night after the show and the game, you're like, I didn't want this to, there are things that we say to where we obviously, there are things like, hey, the Lions defense is good enough to win the Super Bowl. You don't want that to be right. You don't want all of your takes and everything you say, you don't want always to be right, because as a Lions fan, you're like, hey, I hope they fix this and this thing gets turned around. But credit to you, Jeff, and that's on me. I don't admit I'm wrong a lot. I was wrong. Dead wrong. You were 100%. That defense, it was going to catch up to them at some point. And that's where it's hey, and we had this argument today in the group chat with some people about who's to blame more, who's to yes, obviously you give majority of the blame to your quarterback who had 4 turnovers. You can never win a game like that. You won a 5 turnover game versus the Texans in the regular season. But if we're keeping it real, in the playoffs, you can't have 3, 4, 5 turnovers and win a game. And that's what Jared Goff did. It was one of those games from him over the last 2 years, 3 years that you've only seen once or twice a year. And again, it happened to be in the playoffs. But with that there, you also, on the other side of the ball, you couldn't stop the Commanders. I was thinking about it today. And again, we're just talking about this. We're having conversations. This isn't me excusing Jared Goff of what he did. This isn't me. But my point in the group chat earlier today was, hey, just because Jared Goff had that bad game, that doesn't excuse the people who also played bad and what also went wrong. You can just say, hey, throw them away. It's all on Goff. No, that was a lot on Goff. He has to look himself in the mirror and be like, hey, you did that to this Detroit Lions fan base. But also, there was a bunch of other things. That defense on Saturday night, boys, they were Swiss cheese. They couldn't stop a nosebleed on Saturday night. And the fact, Jeff, to your point, that was going to happen sooner or later. And it happened in the first round of the playoffs versus a rookie quarterback who's been playing his best football, and you looked embarrassed. And my thought process today when I was thinking about that was, one, Jared Goff shouldn't have those turnovers. But offensively, when your defense can't stop them and they're scoring every single possession, your offense has to be perfect. You have to be aggressive and you have to go out there and make plays. And then Jared Goff fumbling, throwing interceptions, the interception to J-Mo, trying to force a touchdown because your defense is just giving up points. J-Mo, I know that's such a bad play call. Ben Johnson, and I know people, we're going to talk about Ben, but people being like, oh, Ben Johnson sold the game. I don't think he sold it because he was going to the Bears. I think that man might have had one of the worst games that he's had as an OC in Detroit, to be quite frank with you. To be quite frank, he made so many bad decisions. Say it how it is. AG, your defense had 12 guys on the field in literally the biggest play of your season, and you have 12 guys on the field. I don't care if it's practice squad. You're about to be a head coach. Figure it out. It's 4th and 2 in the NFL playoffs. That's amateur football type deal there. So, like, to me, it's like, yeah, Jared Goff, you were trash. You were bad. But, man, you got outcoached. There are so many other things. That defense was terrible. You gave up – I mean, you gave up so many points. You gave up 30-plus points defensively. That's embarrassing in the playoffs. Embarrassing. So to blame it on just Goff, yes, Goff is the number one reason. Turnovers put your defense in a – but, man, you got outcoached, and you got outcoached so bad. Dan Quinn outcoached Dan Campbell and that staff by 1,000,000 points. That's to me, it's like you're supposed to play Detroit, represent the city and what Lions football is about and what it's been about for 3 years, and you got embarrassed. That's what really kind of pisses me off a little bit after Saturday night. I'm sorry for going on too long of a rant. That's on me, boys. But geez, that was annoying. That really frustrated me on Saturday night.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the big picture. It's not like, I know, because I saw a comment here. They're like, well, the Lions defense was injured. That's the point. Like the injuries were just too much. It was just too much. The Meek injury, like when Meek went down, you notice Aaron Glenn ran more zone late, and they were running it because Jane Daniels and his mobility. Like they were getting picked apart. Jane Daniels looked so comfortable. He just was chilling. No sacks. They ran for 5 a carry. So now you're giving a rookie quarterback time and a run game. Yep. Like, oh my, and Jane Daniels is he's already a great quarterback. So like, okay, give any great quarterback time in the pocket in a run game, and you're going to take on Josh Allen in the Super Bowl? Like, dude, and to mention, speaking of Josh Allen, when they played the Bills, Boone, what did Goff do? He balled. He played excellent. Yep. Played, honestly, the best game we've seen all year. What happened? They gave up 50. So like, you can point that game specifically. We all agree. Goff was a huge. You can't win a game with what do you have? 4.
He looked like the inexperienced quarterback. You had a rookie on the field, and you had an 8-9 year NFL vet. The NFL vet looked like the rookie. That's just.
It looked like he was on the road. It looked like Jaden was playing at home. He looked so comfortable out there. He looked 100 times better than Jared Goff on Saturday night. It's insane. That's got to be. That's like a collapse where, and now we talked about this in the post game a lot. It's like Lions fans last year, it's still that adrenaline high of like, you make the NFC championship run. And this year, everyone expects it to just be progressive and you make the Super Bowl. But at some point, man, you're going to go through some lows. And this was a huge low, like a massive low, a massive upset. And it's crazy. And we're going to pick it apart. We're going to talk Jared Goff, the defense, kind of just the outlook of everything. We'll get to all the offseason shit later, but in the week, we'll focus on the game today. But we do have a special guest joining the show. I want to get his opinion on it all because he was there in attendance. And that is the man who covers the Detroit Lions for PM Live. That is our good friend, joins us every single Monday. And as always, brought to you guys by BetUS. That is Kory Woods. Kory, what's going on, my man?
Yo, what's going on?
Kory, listen, you got the Buffs on. I saw the Commanders players.
Wires. Got to get you together. These are the wires.
Hey, it's on me, Kory. That's on me. All right. Let me lock in. Kory, you were there, all right, in attendance, and we'll get to the Ben Johnson stuff. But when you left that stadium, what was going through your head? What you had to watch as an 8.5-point favorite, heavy favorite, Lions fans juiced up? I mean, what'd you make of that performance on Saturday night?
Well, I kind of felt something was weird in the air when I walked into Ford Field that day. Not saying I sensed that the Lions were going to lose, but it was a weird feeling in the air that day. But, to answer your question, after I saw that game, to me, it just really resembled the Week 15 loss they had against the Buffalo Bills. Same thing, slow start, not able to generate any pressure on a mobile running quarterback. And they got too cute with the play calling at times on offense. It was pretty much the same loss. And I know some people thought that maybe things were, fixed because they won their next 3, their next couple of games after that. They beat the Bears, they beat the 49ers and the Vikings, but, those weren't mobile quarterbacks. So, I mean, just one of their weaknesses showed up with, pretty much so many guys on injury reserve, including 5 or 6 starters. So, I mean, I would say it was shocking in the sense that that they knew that It was shocking in the sense they got out to another slow start on offense. That was the shocking part. But the way that Jaden Daniels played, I mean, if anybody had been paying attention to this Commanders team, this guy has been balling all year long. And Dan Campbell said this throughout the week when there are some people, some outlets that got a little bit too beside themselves. Jaden Daniels is not your typical rookie. The guy is, first off, he's 24 years old, so he's a little bit on the older side. He's played in big pressure moments, former Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, you can just run down the list. 3,500 passing yards this season, a little bit over that, roughly 70% completion rate, 25 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, 891 yards on the ground. I mean, the guy balled the hell out the entire season. So it was shocking in the sense that they lost a game, that their offense wasn't able to really get things going. But the fact that, Jaden Daniels performed the way he did, no, because again, it pretty much resembled against Buffalo.
Yeah, Kory, I want to ask you kind of the biggest thing, and I feel like on social media with this Lions lost, that everyone's kind of talking about is obviously out of that game, the 5 turnovers and 4 turnovers from Jared Goff. What are your thoughts kind of going forward? And obviously all of this, all the conversation about Jared Goff in the future, like, hey, can he get you to that big game and win that big game for you? What are your thoughts on that after the performance on Saturday night?
Well, let's make no mistake about it. Jared Goff played a terrible game on Saturday. I believe that after that strip sack that he went into concussion protocol. I know that he cleared concussion protocol, but that does not mean that he still did not suffer the effects from that hit. And I think that he was a little bit rattled, and that showed up in the way that he played the rest of the way. I'm hearing a couple of things in passing that he may have been under the weather as well, so that could possibly play into it. But when you're talking about long term, Jared Goff is 30 years old, and when you look at the landscape of available options or realistic options out there, who would you replace Jared Goff with? And no disrespect to him, if you're talking about replacing Jared Goff with Hendon Hooker, you're already lost the plot. When you look at Jared Goff and what he's done this season, aside from the game against the Texans, and of course this past Saturday, Goff has played like a top 5, top 7 quarterback for most of the season. And again, not his best showing on Saturday, but last playoffs, he played some of his best ball. And last year's playoff loss wasn't on him. So I believe that it's a lot of fans are right now in the moment. They're emotional. They're not really logically thinking. But Jared Goff is a damn good QB. If anything, I think the play calling left a lot to be desired out the gate, because all due respect, it was great to have David Montgomery back from the injury, but to start the game off of giving David Montgomery carries and not Jahmyr Gibbs, to me, was malpractice by Ben Johnson, because the past 3 weeks to end that season, Jahmyr Gibbs was on a tear. He scored 4 touchdowns in the game against the Vikings, and you wait until the next series to get this guy going, and then when you see that the Commanders do not have an answer for Jahmyr Gibbs, you still go away from him, something that Dan Campbell kind of hinted at not being very pleased with, but they had to do it because of, the way the game turned. I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around, but simply placing it on Jared Goff, I think that, that I don't think that's fair. I think that, he knows he had a bad game and he'll reload and come back better next year. But, I know it kind of went long-winded on that one, but I just think that the Goff hate today is a little bit, that I'm seeing on social media, a little bit misguided.
You talked about, Kory, the malpractice by Ben Johnson on the sidelines, not putting in Jahmyr Gibbs. I think it was even worse today when it was announced he's going to the Chicago Bears out of all teams. I didn't care if Ben left. I didn't. But Chicago's a different story. What is your opinion now that Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson is going to Chicago, and it looks like he's already been putting a staff together even before today started?
I mean, it happens. This is nothing new. It's new to Lions fans because there's never really been a time where Lions coordinators are being targeted by other teams to fill head coaching vacancies like this, seriously being targeted. Some might be tabbed like back in the day to fulfill Rooney Rule requirements, which was a sham mockery. But I mean, really looking at Lions coordinators to fill positions. This is something that is new to Detroit, and it's no fun when when other teams got the gun. So it's not really shocking. I will say the timing. The timing is definitely quick. I mean, like, man, less than 48 hours. But again, there was never going to be a time that was going to be good for Ben Johnson to depart Detroit to go to Chicago. And even though, yeah, he stays in the division, when you look at the landscape of the jobs out there, the Bears have a pretty much set offense with Caleb Williams, that receiving core. I mean, it's a really great situation set up for Ben. And I know some people, oh, he's a traitor for going to the Bears. I mean, there's only 32 of these jobs in the NFL. He had to go to the one that was best for him. And you're talking about a guy that sat out a couple of these coaching cycles to return to the Lions. As a matter of fact, Ben Johnson could have very well been the coach of the Washington Commanders, but he chose to stay back and run it back another year to go get that goal. So the fact that he went out to go get his right now, I mean, more power to him. But on top of that, hey, who's to say that Dan Campbell can't find a replacement? You got to think, Ben Johnson was in Detroit 2 years before Dan Campbell even got here, and Dan Campbell replaced Ben Johnson, who was a rather unknown at that time. He replaced a veteran, Anthony Lynn, and promoted Ben Johnson to that role. So if Dan Campbell has the good sense to promote Ben Johnson, I think he has the good sense to go tab his replacement.
Well, Kory, another one. I want to get to Aaron Glenn because it's already being kind of reported he's going to take his interviews. He's got his rounds this week, the New York Jets, the New Orleans Saints. What do you think he ends up, assuming the Lions lose both coordinators? And I guess a side question, who's replacing these guys?
I think that, well, I'm going to go off of what I'm reading first. From what I'm reading right now is just that if Aaron Glenn's going to meet with the Jets tomorrow, and if no deal is struck, then he's going to go ahead and go meet with the Saints. He also has interest from the Raiders and the Jaguars as well. If I were a betting man, I would say that he would end up with the Saints. To me, it's just a logical fit to go ahead and go back, quote unquote, home where he was at and take over that team. But again, if he goes to the Jets, it wouldn't be shocking. So I would go Saints 1, Jets 2. As far as their replacements, well, I know there are reports right now that are floating out that Dennis Allen is the front runner to land the Bears DC role, but I mean, he's not hired yet. I don't know anything. I'm just guessing. I could see a scenario where Dennis Allen is holding out from accepting any DC job to see what Aaron Glenn does, because if Aaron Glenn takes either that Jets or Saints job and that Lions vacancy officially becomes open, I can see the Lions trying to go after Dennis Allen, because again, him and Dan Campbell have a relationship from their time at the Saints, and it would be an ideal fit, just because they have the same ethos. But if they decide to stay inside the building, I mean, I could see them looking at Kelvin Shepard. That's a guy that Aaron Glenn was grooming to be a defensive coordinator. Who knows? Maybe Terrell Williams might get a look. When you're talking about replacing Ben Johnson, Tanner's been talked about. Offensive coordinator, assistant head coach and running backs coach Scotty Montgomery is being talked about. So those are a couple of possibilities right there. So that's kind of where I would stick with it right now.
Yeah, and I know, Kory, we obviously weren't expecting to talk Lions offseason probably until February. But I just want to get your thoughts now that it is the offseason and there's going to have to be moves made, defensively and get, whether it's free agency, re-signing guys, the draft. What do you see? What direction and what do you think the Lions are going to put at the top of their list heading into this offseason when it comes to player personnel?
I mean, when you're looking at that draft, I think you just have to go strictly defense. When you look at the offense, I mean, if you want to go ahead and add some depth on that O-line later in the draft, more power to you. I think that would be very ideal. But when you're looking at this defense, you're going to be losing some guys. You're going to be possibly losing Carlton Davis. Who knows if you bring Derek Barnes back? Who knows if you bring Ifeatu Melifonwu back? I mean, you got some guys. I mean, Marcus Davenport's going to be gone. You got some guys that you're going to have to replace. So I can see them going defensive heavy in this draft. And I mean, who knows? They may also make some trades. it's kind of fluid. Maybe they might go out somewhere in free agency and add another wide receiver if they don't bring Tim Patrick back, or Allen Robinson back. It's for depth reasons. But I believe that this is going to be a defensive focused draft and defensive focused free agency because they, kind of piggybacking off of what Dan Campbell said today. There's only 53 roster spots that you could have, and he's just kind of wondering, like, man, how much depth on defense can you have based off of what they went through? Because it was a bizarre situation. They went through first and second guys, so I think it's going to be real defensive heavy because that was just where their deficiency was. I think on offense they're pretty set.
And kind of staying with the draft now, Kory, we had this conversation after the game, and it's just something I want your thoughts on as well. Do you think Brad, at least now, needs to kind of shift some of his draft mentality where you see like the Giovanni Manus, the Hendon Hookers, the Broderick Martins, Sione Vakis, all these guys that you're hoping to develop, but at the end of the day, they're not touching the field. And when you see the injuries that this team's going through, especially on the defensive side of the ball, do you think he needs to stop drafting these development, hey, 3-4 seasons down the road, they're going to be good, and he just needs to get guys now? Or do you think just stick to the same philosophy?
I think right now, with where they are, I think if they would have made the NFC Championship or if they would have made the Super Bowl, they could have went ahead and stick with the same philosophy. I think right now they need to be more aggressive in getting guys that are going to touch the field. So yes, I think they need to shift their focus to getting guys that are going to touch the field. Or on another aspect, take some of those picks and hit the trade market to go get game changers to add to this team on the defensive side of the ball, because I still believe their Super Bowl window is open for at least another year or two because they have a lot of those core pieces locked up into extensions, and some of them are still on their rookie deals. But I believe, next year is the season to go for it. Next season is the year to be on your less need, F them picks, and go grab some talent. So if you're not gonna go F them picks and grab some talent on the trade market, then I don't think the ideal, mindset is to draft more projects. Draft people that are going to impact the game right now.
Yeah. No, Kory, I'm with you. This we got to be a little more aggressive for Brad Holmes, but I appreciate you, man. I mean, for this season, you've been crushing. I know the Pistons got you. They're winning now, Kory. I don't know. They get you. You just switched to the Lions. Now the Pistons are looking pretty good. You're doing great work for the Lions. Keep it up. You got an off season to cover, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot.
There you go. Kory Woods.
Appreciate you, Kory.
Check his stuff out. Follow him on X at Kory Woods. It's our guy. But, boys, we got a lot more to get to here. We're going to talk more about the game itself. We'll get into, again, Ben Johnson with the Bears stuff. We'll get into who's replacing the coordinators, all that defense as well. But I got a clip here from Dan Campbell talking about what they plan to do moving forward. It's, the end of the year, Dan Campbell's speech, hyping the boys up. But let's take a listen to what Dan Campbell had to say today.
I'm the type of person that replays every bad decision, every bad move in my head over and over on purpose, just to let it burn and eat away at you, because that's the stuff that makes you not want to feel that anymore, is to go back for more. So we fell short. It wasn't good enough. The players are extremely disappointed. I know the fans are. I certainly am. But we will reload and we will be back.
There you go.
Fires me up, to be honest.
Yeah, and Dan, he's a very good rally the troops, guy. So I don't deny that they will reload and they will have success next year. I get all that. It's just frustrating, especially you guys have been watching the NFL forever now, that every team, no matter how you shape it, has a window, and it's not like there's a window and you never win again. It's just there's a window with your prime. It's like the prime team with guys that are you're not paying yet. That's just how it works. And then after a while, you still have a good team, but this team they've constructed is a prime, like championship level team. And the frustrating part is injuries derailed them completely, along with obviously how they played on Saturday. But it's like the defense, that was a Super Bowl defense to start the year. That how it was constructed, it looked like, okay, they got playmakers everywhere. The offense, you got your coordinators back. Everything was in the Lions' favor. They're favored to win the Super Bowl. And then everything falls apart with injuries. And then you crap the bed on the side of the ball that people were basically depending on to carry them to a Super Bowl. Like, it sucks. And Dan said this last year in the NFC Championship game, man, it's hard to get back. But this year they didn't get back. So I guess there's only way to go from here, boys, is forward. Unless, again, there's things you can't predict, like injuries. I get that. I don't.
Again. Come on.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Not to this extent, obviously, hopefully, but it's going to happen. But yeah, I don't deny that this team is going to be fine moving forward. I think it has to do with what they do this offseason, which isn't add a bunch of talent because they have talent, but it's really about what Brad does in the draft and in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I just looking at it too, it's like at the end of the day, and Lions fans who are like, hey, this was the year, it's done. Like, when those, like, no, you're at the top. Like, that's how I look. Like, you're now at the top of the NFL and you're not going away. Like, that's where I think it is a little exciting. I know, like, the first couple of days, you're like, sucks. Like, this was supposed to be the year. You literally were Super Bowl favorites, but you're still at the top. And like, you look at teams like the 49ers who have been there for 4, 5, 6 straight years, haven't gotten it done. The Bengals who've been at the top with Joe Burrow haven't been able to get the job done. The Eagles, outside obviously with Nick Foles, when they went on that crazy run with Carson Wentz and then Nick Foles, like, but outside of that, the last few years with Jalen Hurts, they keep getting there, can't get the job done. The Bills for years can't get the job done. The Ravens recently can't get it done. So it's like, hey, you're at the top with those guys, and you have now, I would say, that window the next 3-4 years when you have Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, Panay, Dan Campbell, Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby, Brian. You still have your core pieces. You're going to be like, and we've said it too on Saturday night, you're probably going to even be favored to win the Super Bowl once this offseason hits. Like, you're going to have the defense completely healthy again, which before Aiden Hutchinson goes down, that's a top 5 defense. And you're going to add pieces to it. Like Dan said, you're going to rebuild, reload, and you're going to add more pieces to this football team. You have a lot of pieces, main pieces coming back. I looked at the free agent board, boys, like the Lions. Guess what? No big pieces are on that board outside of Carlton Davis. It's just Carlton Davis, and then there's a bunch of guys that are role players. And you're probably going to bring some back, and you're going to add new ones, and you're going to get guys in the draft. So, like, you're only going to reload. You're only going to get better. Yeah, that was disappointing Saturday. And the reason you lost the game was because your quarterback had 4 turnovers. And listen, last year in the playoffs, guess what your quarterback didn't do when you went on your run? He didn't have those turnovers, and he went on a run. And in like the NFC Championship game, played great. And you should have won. Guess what the problem was there? You didn't have a defense. And it's like, next year, you're going to have a defense. If your quarterback plays good and you can find a way to get an OC and a DC, you're going to go win a Super Bowl, or you're at least going to have a chance to win a Super Bowl.
Yep.
And that's where it's like, listen, it's hard to win a Super Bowl in the NFL, boys. Like, I know the Chiefs have done it for 3 times the last 5 years. It's tough. Like, it's like one of the hardest things to do in sports is to win a Super Bowl. Only one team can do it every year. And like, there's injuries, there's things like, and this year, guess what? Jeff, you said it after the NFC Championship game loss. Another thing you were right about, which I hate that I have to keep saying that, but like, you don't know what's going to happen every year. And this year we ended up getting hit with 1 million injuries. And it's like, if that defense is a couple guys stay healthy, we're probably having a different conversation today at the end of the day. And even with the turnovers, like, you're going to find a way to overcome a couple of those drives on Saturday night, which is crazy. Like, to think your team is that good to where if you had a couple more guys defensively, you probably have an opportunity to win that game, even with 5 turnovers. Like, that's how good of a team you are. Like, and you're going to have that team next year and the year after and the year after. And it's like, eventually you're going to break through that barrier and you're going to win a Super Bowl. But it's like, hey, welcome to the top. That's why I just keep thinking. It's like, hey, you're still at the top. Like, you're still one of the best teams in the NFL for the next 3 or 4 years. You're a top 5 team, no matter what.
Yeah, that's where I think they got to get used to being. And I think that was a huge problem with Saturday night's game is they were at the top, but the Lions truly have not been at the top, because it's one thing to be the hunted in the regular season when you're one of the top teams in the NFC. You're just ramming through teams. Like the Lions for that 8, 9, 10 week stretch were the hottest team in football. Took a loss, picked right back up. But in the postseason, to be the number 1 seed, the team coming off a bye week, to be the hunted then, they weren't prepared for that. They weren't ready for that. So that's where it bit them in the ass in the offseason, like you boys said. Go get pieces in free agency. But more than anything, you saw what happened when the defensive line got hurt. You better get everybody and their fucking mom in Allen Park recruiting offensive linemen for this draft and this free agency as well. Because if something happens to that offensive line, because look at Taylor Decker, look at Frank Ragnow, look at Graham Glasgow. I know Mahogany's there, but even look at Kevin Zeitler. All those guys are older. And if you think that they're going to be able to keep playing at the same level and being able to stay healthy, it's not going to happen. You got to replenish that offensive line and be able to keep your pedal on the foot in the postseason. That's what ultimately killed them. I think the Lions came out big-headed against the Commanders. They heard all the noise. They're usually the team that's punching up at people, and they were the 12-5 team last year that couldn't beat anybody legitimate, so to say. And they went a run in the postseason. Now you look at the Commanders. They were the 12-5 team, and the Lions were like, we know we're that team. We know we're that good. They heard all that noise, but they didn't put it out there when it mattered the most. So they got to figure out a way to rewire everything. It's going to be extremely difficult for them to go 15-2, especially next year with new coordinators. They're probably going to drop a couple more games, especially early on. Doesn't mean they're going to be terrible. Probably going to be a 12-13 win team. But to get to the level they were at this year, win-wise, they're not going to be able to do. But with Aiden Hutchinson coming back, hopefully for a full season, instantly makes this team better than what it was this year, in my opinion. I don't see how this team takes a dip, but they got to figure out in the moments. Like, you can see the moments where it's like, we talk about it all year, where it's like, okay, it's fine because they get through, like on the 4th and 1s, the 3rd and inches, when they're passing the ball and getting cute, in the red zone when they're getting cute. It works when you're playing the Bears, when you're playing the Jags, when you're playing the Titans, and you could see, okay, they can get away with against them. But you saw all the little things that the Lions were doing wrong all year that they were overcome were put under a huge spotlight in the biggest moments in that NFC divisional round. So they just got to iron those things out as well. I don't think it's all personnel.
Okay, yeah, Klotz, one of the points you said there, it's like spot it. Like, you're gonna have a better football. You went 15-2 and you were the 1 seed. You're gonna have a better team next year. Whether you get the 1 seed or not again, you're gonna have a better roster. Like, because guys are going to be healthy again, and you're going to add more pieces. Like, Brad has added pieces every offseason. So it's like, you're going to get better. You can only get better. And that's why I do think it is scary. Because, and it's actually, honestly, I'm not saying this loss is a good thing. I don't want people to think that. But going through stuff like this helps you to see teams get to a Super Bowl and win it. Like, yeah, last year, you're the one that's like getting, you're the one that's fighting for your life, and you're the underdog, and you know how to be the underdog. And Dan knows how to do that. And he was able to make a run and go to the NFC Championship game. This year, you weren't the underdog anymore. You were the hunted, and you got to learn. And I'll tell you, hey, you learned. Well, you learned what it was like to be hunted. Now you're able to. Those guys are able to learn, because it is like, it's still. And I know I had this argument with, I think, you, Klotzy, like the other night, and we ended up coming to an agreement about, like, hey, it's a young team, but it's really not, because like they are at that point where it's win now. So there's no excuse. But if you want to look at the optimism side of this whole thing, it's, hey, they learned. And like, that's sometimes players, coaches, teams have to go through stuff like this to be able to figure out the next year, hey, when we're in that position, now we know not to take it so lightly. And now we know how to approach it. And I think with an even better team next year, I don't see a world where they're not playing for a Super Bowl next season. And I know we're so far out, but it's just like the way Dan Campbell works, knowing that they're going to get every single defensive piece back essentially, and they're going to only reload more weapons and more pieces. It's like, hey, the only thing that you're going to put a big question mark on this offseason is your OC and DC. And like, I think Dan, like, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I trust Dan to figure that out. And I would say this team picks off right where they left off, and they end up kind of going right through the same thing next year. And you're going to be battle tested when you get to the playoffs, because you have such a hard schedule.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, if you want to take it to the next level, you can't be bringing in projects. I agree with Kory. Like, this team, you're in a win now mode. You need to get playmakers, or at least guys that can contribute if they need to. I mean, you ended last year with Kindle Vildor at corner, and you ended this year with Kindle and I'm picking on him. I don't mean to pick on him, but the point is you shouldn't, and it's not his fault. He's like the 5th, 6th corner, or 4th, 5th, whatever he is, corner. It's just like, man, or offensive lineman, or defensive lineman, Broderick Martin, like that's a project. He looks terrible. Giovanni Manu, he ain't ready. Like, there's too many guys that are just like, you got to wait for it. And again, there's going to be times where their number's going to have to be called, and you're reaching out and trying to grab guys in free agency to patch this thing together. And they couldn't do it. The injuries caught up to them, and bad quarterback play. I mean, Jared Goff stunk, but the defense stunk. And the coaches, they weren't on point. They weren't. So it was just everything. And that's what I hammered today in my stream. I think this week, and you're going to see it a lot, guys, people are going to point the finger and say, this is why they lost. This is why they lost. This is why they lost. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of reasons why they lost. I mean, everyone's right. You want to say the people out there want to go after Goff. Okay, fine. You want to go after the defense? Okay, fine. You want to go after some of the play calls or how Dan Campbell didn't call a timeout when there's 12 men on the field? Go ahead, because that was one of the biggest plays of the entire game.
That was nauseating.
There's like AG's at fault for that, but Dan's the head coach. Like if AG can't see that, Dan's job is to see
What's
that.
crazy is all the coaches, if you watch the replay back, all the coaches screaming for someone to get off the field. And they're just like, hey, who wants to step up and call a timeout? I know you don't want to waste one, but it's 4th and 2, 4th and 3 in the biggest moment of the game. And you like someone like, dude, I would rather, and honestly, I've been in positions as a coach to where like I'm in charge of, hey, these are the timeouts we have. This is what we have. This is what, like in basketball, the fouls. Like I would rather get ripped by the head coach by making that decision and just calling a timeout than just leaving it out there and saying, hey, automatic first down, 1st and goal, especially in a 2-possession game. Like there's no way you're sitting there calling guys. Tom Brady noticed it. Like no one really understood. We thought it was a delay of game. And then they replay it, and all the coaches are sitting there like, get off the field. It's like, what are we doing?
Washington just watched him. Like, Washington was in shock, too. Like, Jaden Daniels, you can see just like, why would I snap this ball right now?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like if I snap this ball, somebody could possibly get injured. Like, anything can happen. You can decline a penalty, but still, like, just the flow of the game can change. And you're just watching it. You saw Calvin Shepard, Sean Deion Hamilton, like you said, Boone, just going nuts on the sidelines. But that's when it's like, we're just not prepared, and that's what this team like is really built on is Dan Campbell having these guys ready. That's why it's just pathetic. Like, and I going back to what I said earlier, maybe the Lions, like as their organization stands today, they're not frauds, but that season, what they put on in that game, they were frauds. Like that was just a fraud Detroit Lions team. Like that.
I just think it's more say unprepared. Like I think unprepared is like the word to use.
My thing is though, like if
unprepared.
we saw the Philadelphia Eagles, if they had the 1 seed and they did that, we'd be like, that's a fraud team. That was a fraud 1 seed. If there was any other NFL team that did that, even if the Chiefs did it this year, like they were still good.
That's why I disagree.
I'm not saying that they were good, but when you talk about the weaknesses that were exposed as Super Bowl contenders, because it wasn't a 1-score game. Like the Lions got their ass kicked.
Fraudulent insinuates they were never a good football team, and they were. Like that's where it's like
like they were never.
That's why I disagree. Like fraudulent.
It was put
fraudulent insinuates again that they were a bad football team and they were never actually that good. They were that good. They like if they Klotz, you were saying they were Super Bowl, like they were literally Super Bowl favorites. Yeah. If they pull that game out, they're probably going to have a chance to go to a Super Bowl. Like that's not a fraud team. They had a bad day of football. They were unprepared. They weren't ready to go. They had everything it took to go beat that one. They were 8.5-point favorites. Like a fraud, you can't use the fraudulent word to me. It's just like Jared Goff had 5 interceptions. Like that, or not 5 interceptions. They had 5 turnovers. He had 3 interceptions in a. Like that's not a fraudulent team. That's you just literally played the worst football of the season that day. They were not a bad football team this year. You're saying they're a bad football team this year. They're not a bad football team.
They're obviously not a bad team if you're in the playoffs. But if the 14-3 Vikings were 15-2 and they went out there and lost, and they lost like that, everyone and their mom,
what you're saying, like that Vikings team, they weren't beating teams by 30 points. Like this team had they were a good team that threw it down the trash, Klotz. Fraud is not like this was a wasted opportunity. Like the Vikings team back then had no chance at a Super Bowl.
When you have Kendall Vildor, Maurice Norris, and the guys that you have on that defensive line, and you're the 1 seed, that, in my opinion, they were not a true 1 seed.
You're thinking, I think, in your Booner, because if we're talking about from week 1, looking at that roster, like, yeah, it's a damn good roster. But I think as a 1 seed with what they had left, like, that ain't a 1 seed.
I just think calling them a fraud just means they were a bad team. They were never a good team. That's wrong.
Not what it is.
Yes, it is. That's literally the definition of being fraudulent.
Well,
they never a good team.
Fraudulent is looking like something that you're not.
Yeah,
like fraudulent money.
They were at home and they lost
something
to a rookie quarterback, and they didn't look like the team that they advertised.
They weren't a fraudulent team. They were actually a good football team this year.
Then what happened?
They had a bad day of football. They played bad.
That defense we've seen before a lot lately. That's where I'm leaning though. It's like we've seen that defense. Jared Goff played bad, but like as a 1 seed, Booner, they would have won this game and gotten smoked by the Eagles. And then we would have been like, what the hell? Like, you're the 1 seed. Even if they won that game, they would have won in a shootout fashion. I'm going to be honest, boys. I probably would have came on today if they won close. I'd have been like, this team, like, I don't. As a 1 seed, you're barely beating the Commanders. All due respect to them, but like, I don't know. Maybe it's like, okay, it's like we're looking at it. It's like what do you call semantics about frauds? It's like how you define it. I think you're thinking of like what they displayed at home on Saturday with what they had on their roster as a 1 seed. It's like that team with all the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like a fraud. You just never had a chance ever to win the Super Bowl. Like, to me, it's like Minnesota Vikings. They're considered one of these great team this year, and a couple years ago, they never had a chance to win a Super Bowl. They never were going to. The Lions had a chance. Like, they would have gone on a Super Bowl run. They dropped the game.
Do you think truly with the defensive injuries that they had, they could have won a Super Bowl after what you saw? Like, that's why I think I don't.
If they didn't have those turnovers, I still think with the offense, you still have a chance. Like, I think what killed them, obviously, at the end of the day, is those 5 turnovers. You gave them 5 extra possessions. If you don't give them 5 extra possessions, if you give them 3, you probably win this game, and you're probably favorites going into next week at home versus the Eagles. You are. That's a fact.
They would.
That is a fact.
They would probably be a point favorite.
You're a favorite though. You're favorite though. If you take away 2 of those at turnovers, you're probably sitting there as a favorite at Ford Field going into Sunday night.
And what would have happened?
Listen, you guys are acting like I'm saying something that's not true. That's true. And what would have happened, Jeff? You would have gone in there and you would have probably competed, and it would have been another shootout. And if you don't turn the ball over, you probably outscore the Eagles because your offense is that good with Jahmyr Gibbs and those guys.
But that's what we said against.
But again, it's just
what
like
you're saying with the turnovers is absolutely correct.
We're not having this conversation.
We are right. This is the only time to have it. You're absolutely right with the 5 turnovers. If that doesn't happen, you probably win that game. But also on the reverse end, if your defense can get stops off those turnovers, you win the game. If you don't have that many injuries on IR, you don't got to be doing the game.
Agreed. Both are true. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Both things are true.
But when I'm saying the whole reason why because we're talking about, we got on this because the fraudulent thing. The whole fraudulent thing is because those guys aren't there, and we're acting like they were. We're acting like they could stay at that level the whole time. They lost their 2 best defensive linemen, Aiden Hutchinson and Lee McNeil, Marcus Davenport. You lost your 2 best corners in Amik and Carlton Davis. And it was like, you're supposed to be like, fine. Malcolm Rodriguez, even like the role guys even were gone. And we were acting like the other teams in the NFC weren't in that situation. This was still an elite football team. But at some point, they went downhill. And it was unfortunately in the divisional round.
Now I want to get to what happened today, which it was massive and Ben Johnson is now going to be the next head coach of the Chicago fucking Bears. All right. And I'm going to, and I put a video out today. It was, it was tough to read this. Honestly, boys, I'll be honest with you. I've got news pop up on my phone and I've been shook like a couple times, like with certain things like Hutch going down. Like we watched that. We're all rattled. This rattled me, actually rattled me. And I'll explain where I'll explain where I'm at with it because I talked about it earlier, and we have to let's be very, very clear. The Chicago Bears job, as much as we want to deny it, compared to the Raiders who don't have a quarterback, the Jags who I was told by a lot of people, and I still disagree with it, but Trevor Lawrence stinks all of a sudden. All right, in the franchise is a disaster. So, like, I get that. But the Bears are trying to turn their franchise around. They brought in Ryan Poles, who came from the Chiefs. Ryan Poles has an identity, what he wants, right? He wants an offensive mind to coach his number 1 overall pick. Kind of like what he got to see with Kansas City. They want an offensive mind. And they got the guy who I know people are going to come at Ben, and rightfully so. He joined a division rival. I get that. But if we look at this objectively, they got one of the smartest offensive minds in the entire National Football League. They did. They hired, that was the best hire available. They got Ben Johnson, who we would all agree in Detroit did an absolute incredible job. And then people would bring up play calling on certain instances. That's fine. You can critique him. He's not perfect. He's human. But the reality is, we all wanted this man to take a job in the AFC for a reason. All right. He's in the division. It sucks. The Bears, it's a great hire for Caleb. They are obviously seeing what Cliff's doing with Jaden Daniels. And, they want an offensive mind for their quarterback, Caleb Williams. But like, I'm not going to sit up here, guys. I got to take the Honolulu blue lens off for a second. That's a great hire. And I think Ben is going to work out in Chicago. I think the Lions are still going to run the NFC North because I think their team is just so good. And Dan Campbell, depending on, we'll see who he hires, I'll get to that in a little bit because I'm curious later on. We'll get to that conversation because that's going to be very important. But he's going to work. People I've seen on Twitter, and this is what frustrates me. And I get it. I do. He went to the Bears. I get it. But people are, my boy Danny, hopefully he's watching because I saw his tweet. Danny Bennett does great work, by the way. Detroit Lions on tap. Check him out. He put out, he's the next Nathaniel Hackett. Like Nathaniel Hackett was holding the clipboard for Aaron Rodgers, and Matt LaFleur was calling plays. Ben Johnson's going to call plays, and whether or not the Chicago Bears will be this world beater, we'll find out. But on paper, boys, that's a great hire, and it sucks because he knows a lot about this Lions team, but the Lions know a lot about what Ben Johnson wants. So it goes both ways. This is an excellent hire by the Chicago Bears. Excellent. I think it's this is me off, but it's a great hire.
It's weird too. I'll say this. I want to just tell the boys real quick. Like, hopefully we're all on the same page here with this, right? Like, Ben Johnson, no hate from us for what he did in Detroit, correct?
No, no, not at all.
Okay, because I was wondering because like on Twitter, the hate from these guys, like the hate from fans, I get it. I think there's two sides to it. The first one, boys, I will say is what he did in Detroit the last 2 or 3 years. And he was one of those guys that had a big reason why the Lions turned this thing around. Like him and that offense sitting down with Jared Goff, those guys kind of coming together and being like, hey, this is what we're going to do. What he did, massive reason why this Lions turnaround happened.
Absolutely.
So that's where it's like there's a lot of people who are acting like he did nothing. He's not a good coach. Jeff, to your point, the man had a top 5 offense for 3 straight years here in Detroit with 6-round picks, with Jared Goff, who got let go basically from the Rams. Like he helped turn this thing around. So all respect to Jared or Ben Johnson on that aspect. On the other side, though, boys, and this is where when I saw the alert, Jeff, I was with you. My heart dropped, and I was like, this is the one thing that you couldn't have happen. Because now Ben Johnson's enemy number 1 in Detroit. We hate him. And you know what? And I would have to think when he made that decision, he could have gone to Jacksonville. He could go to Vegas. And I think, again, I said it before, like I think Jacksonville was a very, very good job to go get when you're talking about the quarterback, receivers. You're talking about all of that. I think Jacksonville was a job people look at and go, hey, that's a great job to have right now. They have pieces. They do. He could have gone there. Ben Johnson decided to go to a division rival and take that franchise over. He made that decision. So for the people who are mad about Lions fans hating Ben Johnson and turning on him so quick, you should be too. He went to a divisional rival. He is your enemy. That's like a Michigan coach being like, hey, boys, I got a head coaching job offer at Ohio State. I'm going to go be a head coach there. And you're like, oh, no, hey, dude, you did so much for us. Hey, we love you, man. Hey, no big deal. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to give you a hug. No. You're an enemy. Like we don't like you anymore. Like it's that quick. And Ben Johnson, when you took the job, he knew that was going to happen. Like when you take that job or you're considering it, that goes through your mind. Hey, Lions fans are probably going to turn on me. Yep. Welcome to fandom. Welcome to football. He's been in Detroit for how long? 6 years now? 7 years? He knows how Lions fans are. He knows how passionate Lions fans are. And I want to address one thing, too, real quick. I'm interested to see what the chat has to think about this. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, too, real quick. I actually told you guys about it before. I posted it on Twitter. It's very interesting to me. And maybe it's not talked about. And I haven't seen anything on it online. Dan Campbell today, and again, I know there's people who are like, Dan might have already known. But him coming out today, being like, hey, I haven't heard an official word, or they have not told me if they were leaving yet. Ben hasn't said anything. AG hasn't said anything. For him to come out into the media and say that, and then a couple hours later, Ben Johnson to take the Bears job, that's not what bothers me. What bothers me is Adam Schefter tweeting out, hey, Ben Johnson has been working on his staff already for most likely a couple days to go to Chicago, but Dan Campbell didn't know. And if Dan Campbell didn't know, that move from Ben Johnson, boys, that's where it really kind of pisses me off a little bit, that Ben Johnson, if he didn't tell Dan, and I would hope he did, but the fact that he went out and started creating his staff before Dan even had a chance or anyone had a chance, he's just trying to take guys from us. He's trying to go out and take Dennis Allen in case Dan might have told him, hey, I wanted Dennis Allen. And Ben said, no, I'm taking Dennis Allen. And he went behind his back, took the Chicago job. Listen, I don't know anything. That's fishy. I haven't heard anyone talking about this on Twitter. That's fishy to me. I don't like that. That's like scummy work. And I'm not calling Ben Johnson a scum. That feels, if that was the way it went down, that feels scummy to me. That you're already creating your staff when you know Dan has to create a staff. You know Dan's going to have to go get guys. That was like, hey, I'm an NFC North rival now. I'm still in the building, but I'm going to be making moves behind your back, and I'm going to be playing chess right now. I don't like that. That's the one thing I don't like. Ben Johnson is an enemy. I'm out on him forever.
Yeah, I had respect for Ben Johnson. I really did. What he did for Detroit in his first 2 seasons as an offensive coordinator was unbelievable. But same was the same bullshit that he did Saturday night and today. Ben Johnson is dead to me. He should be for all Detroit Lions fans. I have never felt like if there was a Judas in the NFL, it would be Ben Johnson, because you know what else? He's going to go try to take the Dennis Allen, but he's also going to go get the Lions players. He's going to try to recruit the Lions offensive players, Lions defensive players. I'm sure we'll see a couple Lions players go to Chicago. The fact that you're going to Chicago and you think you're going to turn around the Bears, who are historically over the last 20 years, now worse than the Lions. If Ben Johnson thinks he's going to be able to do that, all power to him. But you're not. The Bears can win some games. The Bears can have some 9-10, 11, but the Bears are not going to do anything meaningful, because what they needed was the guy to turn around the culture, and that is not Ben Johnson. I thought Ben Johnson would be good if he went to a situation where it was like a Jacksonville. He could have had some success. Patriots, ownership, they've had proven success. But when Ben Johnson released what he does not want in a team, it was a spitting image of the Chicago Bears. So obviously the Bears are about to pay him a lot of money. Ben Johnson simply was a sellout for the Detroit Lions. He was looking at Saturday night. You know what he's looking at? Probably had the play sheet over here and watching Caleb Williams film on the other side. He was not locked into the game. And that's exactly, we were like, why is Jared Goff playing so bad? Why is his play calling so bad? That is why, right there. So in my opinion, Ben Johnson, he should not be liked, respected, or anything.
I'm not on that.
Detroit Lions.
I got it.
It doesn't mean you have to be. That's my opinion. Thank you for what you did here. Don't want to see you ever again on my TV screen.
So I got 2 things to say, okay? Stick with me, boys. One of them is, I think Ben, in his mind, and I think it's like, I know people, I'm already going to get the comments. I don't give a shit. Look at what the Bears have. You have $60 million in cap space, a top 10 pick, a number 1 overall pick at quarterback, and a pretty good defense. Like, that's better than the other. Unfortunately, it's in the NFC North. I get that, but that's a good job. Like, it's a good job. And he thinks in his mind, kind of like what Dan Campbell did, that everyone thinks Chicago is the place where coaches go to die, which it has been. It has been. He thinks he can turn that place around, and maybe he can, maybe he won't. That we won't know until we see this play out. But that's what he believes in. Now, here's the uncomfortable part of this. Okay, here's the uncomfortable conversation. We've seen this happen before, and we'll get to specific hires later in the show on who we think will replace Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. But again, remember what we talk about a lot when it comes to playoffs. People think the NFL, you just rise, and you make you win a playoff game, then you make the NFC Championship game, then you make the Super Bowl. It is not guaranteed that this offense will stay at this level. It's not, because how many great play callers are there in the NFL? There's not a lot. Even look at Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick was great. Then he wasn't. Ben was consistently great. I mean, you said it yourself, Booner, top 5 offense through, a handful of years. There's great pieces here. There's great pieces. A great offensive line, a very good quarterback, the backfield, the weapons. It's all there. But who's calling these plays? That has yet to be determined. And I'm telling you, it's not guaranteed. We saw with the Eagles after Shane Steichen left. They went through a year where they had to clear out their staff to get in Kellen Moore to restart it. It took a year, right? And look at the Bills. They lost Brian Dable. It took another year before Josh Allen started playing well again. He struggled. Like, it's not guaranteed. I'm just going to be honest with everyone that next year it's just, oh, Ben's gone. Here we go. Top 5 offense, top 5 scoring offense in NFL history. It's not. So, like, this hire, whoever Dan brings in, it could either be Anthony Lynn or it can be a Ben Johnson. It has yet to be determined. But this hire is going to be one of the biggest decisions Dan Campbell's made, to replace that guy. I'm just being honest with
It's
you.
huge. I think both ways, like offensively and defensively. Like this is going to be the biggest. Like we're talking about adding players and rebuilding, like reloading. The biggest thing that's going to happen this offseason is Dan Campbell picking an OC and a DC. Like that's going to be like the biggest like question mark going into next season. And at the end of the day, though, like everyone wants Tanner Engstrand. Like I wouldn't not mind that because he's been in the room. And one thing Dan said today, which stood out to me a little bit, is he wants to keep the terminology. He wants to make everything to stay kind of a little bit familiar to Jared Goff and that offense that him and Ben built together. He wants to kind of keep it the same. And when you're making those comments, typically I would think that if you want to keep the terminology and how you played this last year, most likely it's an in-house type of deal, just because of like, hey, you're not going to go out of, out there in the world and go grab someone else, bring them in-house and be like, hey, we want to use our terminology. Like, no, not to a new OC. It would have to be someone in the building to kind of keep that offense the same and keep that terminology the same. But yeah, that's where I'm kind of looking at. I'm interested to see what they do though, because Ben, that is a big, it's a big
replacement.
Yeah, a lot of people act like it's not too. Like that's the crazy thing. It's like no, that's and that's where it's like really bothers me a little bit. It's like, no, this is a big deal that Ben left. Like, and I know obviously people are acting like it's not because he went to Chicago, and I'm sure they would have different thoughts if he went to Vegas or went to Jacksonville. But like, no, that is like, this is a big deal. Like, that's going to be your number one priority this offseason is replacing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn.
We got some super chats I want to get to. Jesus Vision, appreciate the $5. Says the coordinator's not focusing on the game and being prepared for other things has an effect on the players. See, I can't speak on. I don't know. I don't know personally. I'll tell you what I think. I don't think coaches should interview for a job until the season's over. I think that's, and I get it. You have to start prepping for the draft. But even to get ahead of stuff, it shouldn't happen until the season. That's my opinion on it. I hate in-season interviews and stuff. But thank you, Jesus Vision, for that. Freddie fell through on 3. Thanks for the $2, brothers. Just fly to Vegas and give Max a blank check. I agree.
I mean, it's just interesting. You have to start giving money to people. That's
the only issue. Spenmo, appreciate you, my guy. Thanks for the $2. Says Osama Ben Johnson. I mean, that's what's basically being displayed right now on social media. And I'll tell you this right now, guys. In not only is his replacement like huge, and Dan already said that Jared's going to weigh in. Of course, he should. And a lot of the terminology, he wants to be similar. He wants it to look similar. So whoever they bring in is good. They want a similar feel. That indicates to me that it's going to be Tanner Engstrand. That's kind of my early indication.
The terminology and all that. That's like, yeah, it's Tanner.
He's the guy that's been around. So I would assume it's Tanner. But here's the thing: we don't know what Tanner is. I mean, I like him. We all like him, but we don't know what he is. He's still going to have to call plays, and it could easily be a regression. And I hope it isn't. But here's the other thing I want to get to. I mentioned that. So I think it's going to be Tanner. On the defensive side of the ball, I don't know. Maybe it is Kelvin Shepherd, but here's where I'm at. Are you going to bring in 2 new coordinators that have never been a coordinator before? That's a tough position to be into, And I get AG Super Bowl contending, and you have 2 new coordinators. Like, to me, you have to have at least one of these guys have experience. That's a tough position to be in. For a legitimate championship team. I mean, look around the NFL. All these guys are experienced, man.
It needs to be on the defensive side of the ball, because I agree with you. Because when you look at it, what's going to make or break it, again, we talked about it all year, and Jeff, you were proven right on it, like we mentioned a couple of times. Like, offense will win you games, but defense will win you championship games. When you're in the NFC with guys like the offense that Philadelphia has right now, the offense that Minnesota has, hell, even the NFC North of the Packers and Bears with Ben Johnson right now, you need a guy that's seen it before on the defensive side of the ball. If you have a guy who's a defensive coordinator who now has to learn how to game plan situationally in the playoffs, that's not something that I think the Detroit Lions are. That's not a situation they should be in. When you have Dan Campbell and Scotty Montgomery used to be a head coach in college football. He's been an assistant coach for many years in the NFL. Like, I think they have enough. Antoine Randall, guys who have been in that moment where they can kind of, if the offense takes a dip, they'll be good enough. But we've seen year in and year out what the weakness of this team is the defensive side of the ball. So we can't have another weakness, quote unquote, something you're holding back with inexperience at the defensive coordinator position. I think Kelvin Shepherd at this point, he's a great option, but I would prefer to go like sell the house and you go get Jim Schwartz. Like, that's something like that I put. Now, it doesn't have to be Jim Schwartz. Go get a guy who has done it before.
Real quick, Booner, because I'll let you go. I want to read this because this was replying. Reese was talking about what I was saying because I said you need some experience. He says, you mean like how AG and Ben Johnson were never coordinators? Here's the difference, though. Those guys had years to get ready for this, at least a year or two to get ready to be a legitimate team. You're walking into next year as probably a top 3 favorite to win the Super Bowl, and you got 2 new coordinators. Like, at least AG and Ben had to eat crap first, and then kind of work. They had a year or two to grow before they were on the stage. Dude, Weezy D, come on, my man. 2 new coordinators that have never been fresh blood into that type of year. That's tough. But go ahead, Booner. I wanted to address Weezy.
I was just wondering, are we giving out who we want as the next DC?
Yeah, we'll get into golf after this. Now we're on it already. Let's just talk about it.
I want to throw this at DC, and I tweeted it out on our account, and half of the people said yeah, half said no. Rex
Ryan.
You got?
Oh,
Rex Ryan. I saw him on Sunday screaming at people on the desk, battling and sticking up for the Detroit Lions. And the man wants to coach football again. He interviewed for the Jets head coaching job. He loves the Detroit Lions. I think his son's still on the staff. He's one of the best defensive minds in all of football. And I know people are like, no, he's a hard-headed guy. He's a head coach. You're telling me no one, I promise you guys, no one on this earth will affect and change the way Dan Campbell coaches his football team. No, not Rex Ryan. Bill Belichick wouldn't. God himself wouldn't. Dan Campbell's going to coach his football team and control this team and do what he does with this team, and no one will affect that. But if you bring a guy with the mind of Rex Ryan, one of the best defensive minds in NFL history, and he wants to coach again, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you? Klotz, you're saying I want experience, I want guys who know. Like Jim Schwartz, great. Love that. If that happened, he's done great in Cleveland. But Rex Ryan, guys, like I feel like that's a no-brainer. If he wants that job, you give it to him so fast, and you sign that check, and you go, "Yep, let's go win a Super Bowl."
What do you think, Klotzy?
I already said mine. I think I love Rex Ryan too, Boone. I think he'd do phenomenal. You look at what he did with those defenses in the Jets. Been in an AFC championship game before with a quarterback that held him back. I'm not saying that's Goff, but he knows what it's like to have to overcome a situation at the quarterback spot. Now it's Goff with his lack of mobility. I think Rex Ryan would be perfect for that spot. Another guy I just mentioned, and it's my dream candidate, just because outside of Dan Campbell, Jim Schwartz has been my favorite coach for the Detroit Lions. But it's not just that I like the dude. His defenses are always elite. He had a Super Bowl winning one in Philadelphia, and what he's done with the Cleveland Browns over the last couple of years, the Browns, obviously, terribly run organization. They have the Deshaun Watson contract, but what he does year in and year out with that defense, runs a lot of man-to-man defense, has a premier pass rusher, Myles Garrett, he's developed into a defensive player of the year candidate. You look at Zadarius Smith in that front seven, but most importantly, how he's been able to develop linebackers is exactly what this team has been able to do year in and year out. I think he is exactly what this team needs because he's going to hold every one of those defenders accountable. There's no question about that, and that's what Dan Campbell's all about. I think Jim Schwartz and Dan Campbell, I mean, that is a fired-up fucking locker room. I think he's the perfect fit. The question is, will they want to leave Cleveland for Detroit? I mean, they're basically in the same geological region. They're both in the shitty part of the U.S. right off the lake. You could be in the Midwest still. You're going to be playing for a contender, and you're going back home, and I think everybody here would open them with open arms. Like, everybody would love Jim Schwartz in Detroit, so bring him back.
Now, how would that work? How would that work if is he under contract? How does that work? Like, is he expired? Like, is he up? Like, how does that, if he's with the Browns? I'm just genuinely asking. How does that?
I think he's under contract. I mean, I could be wrong. I think that's tougher than it. I don't know if you're under contract.
Yeah, it would have to be a thing where it's like Jim's like, hey, I'm leaving. Detroit's gonna like. I
don't even know if you could do that though. Like, yeah, buy. I just don't know. Like, Cleveland would have to approve that. I don't think Cleveland would be like, go ahead.
You know what Kory said earlier that really
I'm
stuck
interested in
with me?
contract.
Kory mentioned, and it's a great angle because I didn't think about this. Is like Dennis Allen kind of like chilling for a second, like he hasn't like jumped all over. It's like been expected he's going to join Ben Johnson, which for them, like they want an experienced head coach, like someone who's been a head coach before, to kind of be with Ben. But like, why? If you're Dan, call up Dennis, be like, hey Dennis, you want to coach a top team in football next year? You know, you want to coach Aiden Hutchinson? You want to coach these guys? And we've worked together. We share similar insights to what we want out of this defense. Hey, I see you're Albert Jones, the Bears fan. How about we steal Dennis Allen from you? All right? Because Dennis Allen, I will say this, as a head coach, not good. Not actually good at all. But as a defensive mind, dude, he's him. He's him. So I'm curious what happens with this Dennis Allen stuff if he jumps on that Bears job or he waits and AG leaves in the next couple days. And then Dennis Allen jumps with the Lions and screws Ben over, which Ben would have to respect. Like, dude, I'm going to coach the Lions, bro. I'm not coaching the Bears. Like, I wonder I think Dennis Allen's a wild card in this. I think what Kory said is a good point with that. Like,
I wonder, I don't know. Like, my question with it is, like, I'm sure Ben's already had a conversation with Dennis over the last 48 hours. And like they said, he's putting his staff together, and Dennis Allen's one that he spoke with. Like, if Dennis Allen, like, say AG, you don't get that news until Wednesday, Thursday, and you're still sitting there waiting for AG to make a decision. Dennis Allen signs with the Bears. You're like, and that's where he gets into a position to where it's a tough spot to be in, because like there's still that side right now, and I know people aren't thinking that, and obviously majority of everyone is saying, hey, AG is going to the Jets or the Saints, but like he still hasn't made the decision.
What if hear me out? What if Dan talked to him? They're like, hey, we're gonna see what happens with AG here.
Wait, that could happen. But like you're still sitting there. If that didn't happen, you're still sitting there, and you're like, hey, AG could still come back.
AG's like, I'm back, and he was like, shit, Dennis, you got to go to the Bears. He's coming back.
But like that's how I look at it a little bit, to where they're waiting. I hope in the next 48 hours, and I see someone said Robert Saleh. Okay, with that, have we even talked about that yet? Because there's a situation with them. Yeah, Jacksonville, he's already getting a second interview. I think he was in a bad spot in New York, first of all. He was never going to be successful. So I think he'll still be a good head coach, and he has a second interview with Jacksonville. Even then, with the 49ers, they offered him the biggest contract as a coordinator. Like, he would be the highest paid coordinator in the NFL, I believe. I thought I saw. So like he has that to lean back on, like a familiar place, a defense that has a lot of pieces, just like the Lions.
That's fair.
So to me, I think Saleh's out. Maybe we see in the next couple of days a Saleh interviews with the Lions. That would be big time. But
because Lou Anarumo took that Colts job, man.
Took the Colts job, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that he jumped, he was quick. He took that job like today earlier. So like he's gone. He's out.
I really am. I know we were all with Kelvin Shepard for months, or someone in that room. I really hope I'm with Klotz. Like, I truly hope they hire outside for DC.
I want them to bring on defense.
I want an experienced defense coordinator that has we've seen it. Like, we've seen them do that. Like a former head coach who didn't work as a head coach, but we know, like, hey, that guy's a great DC. Like, he was a good DC.
What if that would be Eberflus comes to the D and you got Ben Johnson?
Like, that's another guy who's a good defensive coordinator who just couldn't be a head coach.
He's a good DC. Yeah, he is.
That's where it's I would like a guy like that who we know is going to be a solid DC, who's going to put a great defense on the field and has the experience to go win a Super Bowl like that.
That would, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, Matt Eberflus.
It wouldn't be bad. It's kind of like a little counter.
Yeah.
You take be a great hire.
Dude, imagine
who would. Hey, but here's the question.
He doesn't have to call timeout, so we're good.
No,
let's say Matt Eberflus gets hired theoretically as a Detroit Lions coordinator. Who would have more success, Eberflus as a Lions DC or Ben Johnson as the Bears head coach?
Eberflus is a Lions DC.
I mean,
Eberflus is a Lions DC.
Argument settled. Lions win that one then.
100%.
I think that. So what we were saying is,
with
far as not
roster?
bringing anybody. Yeah, I'm 100% with you, Boone. But kind of just even with coaching, like we were talking about draft picks earlier, coaching, no project coaches, no guys that we can see, hey, this is the first gig. We like what they've done in the past at a different level. But this whole organization needs to be in win now hires, signings, and draft picks. That's what they all need to be win now. Not, okay, trades. Let's see what they can be in 2 years. Trades, everything needs to be win now, because that's what you have to do. We see where it's kind of getting like, okay, 2024 is the year to win a Super Bowl. And we knew that, okay, there's the 3 to 4 year window. We kept saying that all year. But now it's like, okay, first year of the quote unquote window's closed. And we're looking around. We're like, oh, shit. Okay, this is like, we can't afford any more time to be wasted. Like, there's literally zero time to waste. So everything just needs to be win now moved, including the coaches that you're bringing in.
Yeah, Brad usually gives that speech too in the offseason, like, man, we're building for long-term success. It's like, all right, I feel like we're at the point where we are built for long-term success now, but there are holes where it's like we need success now. And it's like there's no more like I can't go into this offseason here and that, in my opinion. I can't. Like, it has to be like you have that. You've built the roster now. You have a roster for 5 or 6 years. Add the complementary pieces to go with this roster you've built.
Yeah, no more looking at Aiden Hutchinson and saying that Marcus Davenport will do the job on the other side of the ball after he's been hurt for 2 straight seasons. No more hurt signings. If they're coming like Emmanuel Mosley, gone. There's a couple guys that you can look at and just be like, love what you guys did here, but this is what you've done for us. Absolutely nothing. The philosophy that you took with those players, don't do it again. Brad Holmes is an excellent GM. Dan Campbell's an excellent coach. They're not perfect. And I'm not saying that we act or that they act like they are, but there's just like,
I'll mention this here. And I'll say, you mentioned Davenport. We knew how that was going to end, or at least we talked about it. We had hope it wasn't, but at the end of the day, we knew he was injury prone. Emmanuel Mosley, same thing. Another one, we know we look at Carlton Davis's career. He never finishes a season. Never. I mean, that dude, except for the Super Bowl run, he finished that. But he's always hurt late in the year. And I love Carlton played well when he was available, but man, dude, get some guys that are just available. That's the key thing, man. To your
that
point.
Is a trend with Brad, is he does like to go get cheaper contracts, guys that are hurt. And this year, you've got to see it backfire a little bit on you here, and that's a problem. Again, the Davenport, Carlton, it backfired quick, and then those were the guys where everyone's like question mark. Emmanuel Mosley, didn't even barely played at all this year or last year. It's like these guys you're signing, hey, injury prone guys and guys you're getting cheap because of injuries, but you're not getting it. You're paying them for what? What did you pay Davenport all year to do nothing?
Let's be real. Ennis Rakestraw, he was injured. He's injured.
He was an injured. He's an injured in the college.
Even before, he was brought in as a project player. You knew he wasn't going to play right away, and that's your second round pick. That's why it's just it makes me want to bang my head on the wall, because it's not me doubting that Ennis Rakestraw can't be a good NFL player. But when's the last time you've seen the Chiefs take a guy they can develop in the second round?
They don't,
and that's not what Brad does every time.
The Eagles don't.
Brad
Rams
finds a guy
don't.
like Christian Mahogany, but it's consistent over the last 2 years. Broderick Martin, Hendon Hooker, 3rd round picks. Sione Vaki, 3rd round pick. It's just every year in and out. There's a guy that's Giovanni Manu. These guys that he's moving up for, losing assets to go and get and waiting to develop. But it's when are they going to develop if they do? There's just, I would love to have at least one of those 4 picks that were in the 3rd and 4th round to be a defensive end that you could have had to developing for a year or two, but was playing during that time. Because you look through the draft, you're not going to hit on every pick, but there's just some where it's the vision was a miss, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, even going back, let's be real. Even guys that got healthy eventually, but that's kind of what Brad's done. The second round, Le'Veon Enrique, he had that back injury. Going forward, I'm with you guys. The second round, first, second, third round.
Dudes, man.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker is a waste of a draft pick. That's literally a waste of a draft pick.
Yeah, and the thing too with the draft is Brad's always just hey, we just want to get the best players that we think could be the best, highest. It's go get an edge that you know is going to play right away. I know you want to Terry. I know we got Terry on, which is fine, but who are the 2 players that we just kept talking about? Defense alignment, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse. I know Jared went before Terry on, but Braden Fisk, second round guy, trade up in the second round. You've traded up for Brian Brand. You've traded up for guys trade up, go get one of those guys. Imagine you had Braden Fisk in there with the Leam and with DJ Reader. So one of those guys got down. I know again, you pick towards the end of the second round, but make moves to and that's the thing where it's a little bit on the side. JMO, you draft JMO is injured. You don't get him until year 3, essentially. It's just, you need guys. You're at that point to where you can't wait for guys anymore. You need guys now. Because if a guy goes down, if someone gets hurt, you need to have someone that's ready to step up and actually play. You can't have a guy that's going through an injury, and you can't have a guy where it's he'll be good in a year or 2 because he's going to develop. It's a win now moment. And you see teams, the Eagles, every year, all of their rookies right now are making plays for them. All of them. The Rams. Go look the Rams' first 3 picks.
Their defense is fucking.
Cameron Kitchens, Brandon Fisk.
Braden, yeah.
Jared Verse. I don't know why I was thinking Jaden.
Yeah, the Rams don't do that
right now. But the Rams, 3 first picks, 3 straight defensive players for starting. Puka, yeah. But I do give Brad credit because he has found Amon-Ra and Kirby. He has made picks like that. I think it's more so the first couple rounds, though, where it's you've seen him take guys who are injured or guys to develop. Outside of last year, he dominated in the draft last year. But this last year, or 2 years ago, but this last year was this was a clear, like, you're drafting for development for the future, and everyone got hurt and you had no one else. Like, all those guys were developing, or hurt. That's brutal. You can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get to a player that real quick before we transition. Klotz, it looks good for you right now. Okay, you're right.
Yeah, boys. And I'm sorry if I seem distracted, but I'm just on, like, as a sports fan, like, I'm just on an emotional roller coaster right now. Like, I feel completely bipolar. Dude. Like, it's the worst thing ever with the Detroit Lions. But yep, my Ohio State Buckeyes are up 21-7 at halftime in the national championship game. And at the same time, it's with Ryan Day. So it's like, I don't like this. This is just a weird feeling.
I got a text from Adam, and he just said Ryan Day 30 times.
Yeah, I'm sure he's been texting me throughout the playoff run. It's Brian Hartline. That's what I rebuttal with.
Well, I mean, Klotzy, after this year, done. He's a North Carolina fan.
And I don't think Ohio State's going to be a national championship contender next year. They'll be good. They won't be this good though. They can't.
Hey, Big Ten. I'm now switching to where I'm not gonna no credit to Ohio State, but hey, the Big Ten runs this thing. Michigan, now Ohio State. Next year, probably like Michigan again or Oregon. Notre Dame. I'll consider Notre Dame the Big Ten.
Nor do they do not deserve to be considered the Big Ten. They're always in these
Big
games.
Ten runs this world.
They run it. Whenever you see Notre Dame in truly like a big moment, this is what happens. Like they get curb stomped by the team out of a legit conference that's been playing legit opponents. Notre Dame has not been good since Lou Holtz.
I'm just switching this thing to the Big Ten, not Ohio State. It's the Big Ten's world.
Speaking of getting absolutely destroyed, Jared Goff was destroyed on Saturday. Just looked awful. 3 interceptions, a fumble, 4 turnovers from Jared Goff. Okay, you cannot win a game. It's they did it against Houston, but the defense shut the Texans out in the second half. Like it's hard, man. You play that Texans game back, you run that back 10 times, they're losing 9 of them. I mean, it's just hard to win a game when you throw that many picks or to have that many turnovers. It doesn't matter if it's quarterback or whoever it is. On Saturday, he was bad. Okay, I want to make that very clear. He had, one of the worst games in a Detroit Lions uniform, I would argue. That offense was atrocious, okay? At least quarterback. Jared Goff was atrocious. Jahmyr Gibbs played excellent. The offensive line, Graham Glasgow, I watched back a lot of stuff today. He was awful too. Graham was so bad. Like on the fumble, Graham missed his block, and that's what the swipe at the ball was, and Jared fumbled. So Graham was bad, but Jared was so bad. And here's the thing I want to make very clear. And I mentioned it a little earlier. He had his worst game in the biggest moment. Okay, I get that, and that's completely fair to go at Goff. It is. I mean, he shit the bed. I think there's multiple factors why they lost that game, of course, and we've already covered it. But from Goff's, let's look at it through an objective lens. Last year, we watched Goff be the quarterback of a team that made the NFC Championship game, and he played excellent. I mean, he had no turnovers in that playoff run. The Lions went all the way to the NFC Championship game, had a 17-point lead, and we didn't hear anything about Goff. Negative. It was fine. You're a game away from a Super Bowl. That was it. Brock Purdy made it. And Brock Purdy had a chance to win. And Brock Purdy, he's not, in my opinion, better than Goff, but nor here nor there, whatever. This year, though, the thing that frustrates me is, does he deserve criticism for that game? Yes. Will this game haunt him until next season and probably for a longer time, given what was at stake? You were the number 1 seed and everything. Yes. Does that mean Goff just forgot how to play football and stinks? No. Do I still believe this Lions team can make a Super Bowl and win it with Goff? Yes. But let's keep it real for a second. And we've all been consistent with this. Goff is the type of quarterback, and there's got plenty of guys like this. He's not Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. Even though Lamar hasn't had necessarily the playoff success, but still that type of player that can do more with less. He's not that. What he is a quarterback that if you have a elite offensive line, you have a elite run game, you have a play caller that is very good like Goff had in Ben Johnson, and you have a defense, he can get you there and he'll give you a chance. I believe that through and through. He's that type of quarterback. You need those things, man. He can't do it and this is away from Saturday, by the way. I'm just talking big picture because Saturday he played awful. But big picture, you can't have a bad defense and expect to win. And they had a lot of injuries this year. I'm going to blame it on that because they had a good defense. But moving forward, if your defense is playing well, you got a run game, you protect him, and you got a great play caller, I think he can do it. I absolutely do. So I'm not with the whole conversation of, they got to move on from Jared Goff. Would you like him to be more mobile? Yes, I would. It'd be awesome, but he's not. So you have to compensate that with other things like protection, a run game, a great play caller, and a defense, which next year I think they'll have, minus the play caller. We'll find out. We don't know at this point. But I still got faith in Goff, guys. I'm not out on Goff. The reality is, guys, he's not like Mahomes. Mahomes can, and I don't know who said this, who tweeted it out, but they said specifically Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks he's ever seen that does more with less. I agree with that. That's not Goff. He needs everything to be pretty much perfect, and that's kind of how it is. And the Lions have built a pretty good team to do that. But that's where I stand now, guys. Who are you getting? Who are you getting right now to replace Goff? You're not going to get anybody, but that's where I'm at, fellas, with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with this. And I was going back and forth with Easy about it in the chat. Jared Goff, and I'm just going to be very clear, like, he's the reason you lost the football game. That's like that's a fact of the matter of what happened on Saturday night. Your quarterback can't turn the ball over 4 times and you win a game. Like you saw with Lamar you saw Lamar Sunday. He turned it over twice and he didn't win that football game. And those 2 turnovers in the playoffs, they cost you. Like, you can't turn the ball over and expect to win football games, especially in the playoffs. And Jared Goff, as much as he has been good all year, he was an MVP candidate, in my opinion, top 5 this year. When it was like crunch time, no pun intended, he folded. Like that was what happened at the end of the day. And like, I'm sure if you went and asked Jared and you asked Dan, publicly they'd probably be like, play it cool. But I'm sure, like, behind the curtains, you're like, dude, Jared. He's like, that was on me. Like, 4 turnovers is unacceptable from your quarterback, and you will never win a playoff game with 4 turnovers. So that's where it's a little bit like, hey, you need to take the blame on that. We know it was him. Now, on the flip side of that, Jeff, to your point, you can still win with Jared Goff. Like, last year, you went on a playoff run, almost made a Super Bowl, and the reason you lost was not even close to Jared Goff. The reason you were up 17 points in an NFC Championship game was partially because of Jared Goff. So, like, he has proven he can win. He can take you on a run. He can get to a Super Bowl. You know that. Now all you have to do is you have to find the pieces, and I've said it already on the show, the complementary pieces on this team. Like, defensively, you have to figure out a way to put that together. You do. Like, you have to have a defense. You have to. And then next year when you get there, guess what? I have faith. Hey, buy the numbers, boys, right? Like, if you're looking at percentages, and if you're like, hey, I'm a betting man, I would bet on Jared Goff to go and win a playoff game next year. Like, he has played great in Detroit the last 3 years, 90% of his games. 90%. Or in the last 2 years. Did we not do the math, boys? What, in the last 2 seasons, he had, 4 bad games like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's rare.
4 out of how many games they played? 18 a year, 18 or 19 a year. Over almost 40 games. He's had 4 bad games in basically 40 games. Like, I'm taking those odds every day. Every single day. I'm taking those odds. So I'm not moving. I'm so far off. Like, Jared is your quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years with the pieces that you have. You're not going to sit here and change his contract. You're not going to get rid of him, trade him. None of that's going to happen. You're full force ahead with Jared Goff. Now, you can still be full force and still say, hey, now you lost us that game. And for the rest of his life, everyone's going to look back at the 1 seed who lost to the 6th seed at Ford Field, 8.5-point favorites, and everyone's going to point the finger and be like, that was your quarterback. That was on him. Which are not wrong at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It was on him. And he knows it. And yes, there were other things in there with coaching and defense that played a part in it as well. But 4 turnovers, that's on you. He knows it. Like, he does. But that does not, again, I don't want to get carried away here. That does not mean you can't win a Super Bowl with him. You can win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. You will win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. And in that point, it shuts off all the haters. Like, you just got to go do it. I told you boys after the game Saturday. And it's like, obviously, Jared is a human. Like, he's a great person. So I had the conversation with you guys off air. I was like, kind of feel like I don't feel for him, but it's just like because he ruined our season. But it's like, think about being in his position as like a franchise quarterback. Yeah, you're getting paid a lot of money. There's like The only thing that will ever make Detroit Lions fans happy for the rest of our lives in his career in Detroit is a Lombardi trophy. That's it. Like, there's nothing else. If you fall short of that for every single year, that is it. Even if you win next year, the next year, if you fall short, disappointing. So, like, yeah, that's a lot of pressure for a guy. But you get paid $50 million a year to handle that pressure and go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So you better go do it for the city and for your franchise. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, boys. And listen, I'm all in on Jared Goff. I saw some people in the chat probably trolling me, being like, Hendon Hooker next year. That's never going to happen. I did text Jeff today. I said, hey, Ben Johnson, don't be surprised. Ben Johnson brings Hendon Hooker, trades Caleb Williams.
That's for trades Caleb Williams.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
They can have Hendon Hooker, but you guys are
funny,
spot on. I mean, to be a quarterback that can overcome a bad defense, you got to be Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or Joe Burrow. Not even Lamar Jackson can say that, because you look at what happened. He played a good game, but over his course of his career, he's played in 8 playoff games, been 3-5 in those games, and the stats have not been that good compared to Jared Goff in the last 8 playoff games. Has went 4-4, one of those losses being a Super Bowl loss. So I think if you're going to hold the same weight with Jared Goff applied to Lamar Jackson, but why not? Because Lamar Jackson can run, and I don't want to hear, well, Lamar Jackson, what did he have to work with? Look at this offense for the Lions. The Baltimore Ravens statistically had a better offense. They had Derrick Henry. They had a legit defense down the stretch of that season, especially in the playoffs, and they had Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Yes, I understand Mark Andrews dropped a touchdown, but there was definitely times in that game where there was things that were outside of Jared Goff's fault that hurt that game and turned it to turnovers. So it's the same argument. So I think if you're going to hate on Jared Goff, you need to hate on everybody else that isn't Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, or Josh Allen. I think you could throw even Stafford in that echelon, because I think where he's at, Stafford's won a Super Bowl. He's put that Rams team in so many situations that they shouldn't be in that are actually good. They should not have been in an NFC divisional team this year, and they would. So Stafford, he's elite as well, but Jared Goff is a phenomenal quarterback that a lot of people wish they could have. I understand that it was a bad game, and he's not that mobile, but look at one of the touchdowns that was in that game. That touchdown pass to Sam Laporta, where Jared Goff looked a little mobile. I mean, it was kind of like you looked at that touchdown pass that Patrick Mahomes had in that game the same day. Jared Goff was pulling out a little mobility. So Jared Goff got better this year. Unfortunately, like I said, I just think it comes down to they weren't prepared. Jared Goff was not prepared as well. Like the whole team, outside of the offensive skill players, J-Mo, Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, those guys were there. They prepared. But when you look at everybody else, like Goff including, they weren't prepared for that moment. Like coming off a week's bye, they thought they were going to be able to kick it in gear, and that's not what happened, and put them back, and it put Goff in panic mode. That game reminded me of a Seattle Seahawks Monday Night Football game. That's what that reminded me of, when they were getting their asses kicked.
And honestly, the reality, guys, I feel like we're a broken record. We've talked about this how many times? Like us three. We've had this conversation before where we ranked Goff in the NFL, and then we had this like conversation where we're like, wow, and this is before the year. Obviously, he played much better than what he was ranked, but we had him at like 7 or 8 in the league. So you're telling me, let's put him at 8. Just put him at the worst spot we had him, 8. There's 7 guys. Like, dude, that's not like, unless you're getting those 7, which, or I get, was it 7, whatever, 6 or 5, whatever.
It's so hard to find a guy, a quarterback.
You're not like, and you're going to be good, so you'll never draft one of those guys. Like, unless you trade up a shit ton to get someone that is that caliber, but you're not going to get Mahomes. You're not going to get Josh Allen. You're not going to get Lamar Jackson. You're not going to get these guys. But I think the conversation that is fair to have isn't the pointless move on from them, because everyone who says that has no plan what to do after that, which is awesome. And this is coming from someone who liked Hendon Hooker a lot, so I can speak
I was literally about to say this is a full circle moment for me, because I was literally breaking that down to you 9 months ago. I was like, who are you going to move on to? Like, you're not guaranteed Hendon Hooker is going to be that good.
No,
like, you are guaranteed you have a top 10 quarterback.
And no, and you were absolutely right. And here's the thing, though. I think a fair conversation, a fair one, is today's NFL and the transition, which not like the Lions can do anything, but the transition to more mobile quarterbacks. I think that's a very fair conversation, because
your hero Quinshon Judkins just won 70 yards, you fool, in the national championship game.
Yeah, it's over. Ohio State's won.
Get out of here.
Congrats.
Come on now.
Yeah, hey, congratulations.
2 yards in a cloud of dust football.
Klotz, I'm happy for you. No one else. I'm just happy for you.
Hey, Judkins, his first break-off run all year. Congrats. I wouldn't touch him. I'd probably
I'm happy,
grab
honestly, at the end of the day, like I'm happy Michigan was able to motivate Ohio State to do this. I'm
You know what?
I'm
So
happy
am
to
I,
be the
Boone.
reason
So
why.
am I, because now I don't have to hear you say a fucking word about Natty.
Well, we are still
Natty. You got
we
the
still won
last
a national. Well, the last one, but we still just won one too. So it's
So-
back to
But
back.
who,
Like
who won the?
we're
who won
both
the
we
first
both
one?
have one on our shoulder now, dude. I think that's amazing.
No, we
Like,
we got two.
we have-
the first
our-
14
our-
bracket. Ohio State won it. The first
our-
playoff bracket expanded. Ohio State won it. We got two.
exactly.
We
No
got
one's ready.
two in the
Once people
last
start to
15
learn it, then you guys are done. It's like you guys just like take it
Start
when
to
it's
learn
easy.
it.
We got the
I would say this,
first of the 12
Klotz,
team
relax.
bracket.
Klotz, bro, Klotz. You
No,
told me yesterday.
I'm-
No. You told me yesterday. You
ahead,
said you looked at me dead in the eyes. You said, "Booner, I was happy for you, and I was nice when you won a national championship. All I ask is for you to do that. I'm trying to do that to you, and you're just
All right.
running it up in my face right now. I'm trying to say, hey,
That's fair.
our network here, we have multiple time national champions. Like, dude, we should be proud of that. Michigan last year, Ohio State this year. What other place right now in the world? Like, there's no one else in the city that can say they've won the last two national champions.
No one in the SEC.
We can, Klotz. Don't
Come
do
on.
that to me. You looked me in
Come
the
on.
eyes the other day and
Hey.
said, Booner, I want you to be happy for me. I'm trying to do that.
Hold
I'm
on.
only happy for you, though. No one else,
Yeah.
Ohio State.
This
Just
is
you.
this is a huge moment, honestly, in Crunch Time Sports history. It's
And again, I'm happy I was able. My team was able to motivate you guys and flip the switch for you guys. Like, you guys needed a wake up call. I
He
think we
actually
can
has
all
a
agree.
point. No, he has a point.
You guys needed a wake up call, and
He
and
came
I
up-
love the fact that it was Michigan that actually gave you the wake up call.
I'm
I
not.
should tweet that out right now.
I just hate that Ryan Day won a national championship, though. He's never gonna leave. Never gonna leave.
The fact that we just watched a Michigan fan and an Ohio State fan shake hands and just be very cordial with one another. I think the two states could learn something from today. I think the two states
Yeah.
can learn from something.
Come on
from
now.
You know, the peace. Look at this. It's like it's like that meme with the gangs holding up the flags. Like that's like you
Two
guys.
bandanas, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you guys kind of can join it. Everything's cool now. You got peace until next year, of course, when they face.
It's Drake and Kendrick getting a handshake. I'm Kendrick, of course. Booner being
okay.
Drake.
That's not fair. Now, okay.
I mean, who would you guys? You guys would prefer Drake to win the battle, of course. Kendrick did. I'm a Kendrick fan. You guys are Drake fans. That's how it would align. That's
Yeah.
fair. You act
Yeah.
like that was an unfair comp.
I
Look
didn't
yourself
like
in the mirror, pal.
reminiscing after all that. I didn't like reminiscing. All right.
Did you see what Bron was wearing tonight too? Buckeye gear.
Brian
You
retired.
know he's there. He's there.
Of course he is. I mean, that's,
Yeah, you ain't worry about that Lake show. I can promise you that.
yeah.
Building the franchise
Someone
around a
said Goff.
40-year-old
Mega
LeBron.
Hustle said Goff is Drake. That's kind of a crazy comp. Is that?
Yeah.
It's
Biggest moment of the year. Didn't show up. That was Drake this year. Biggest moment.
he showed.
Just
Oh, I'm
got
not
folded.
doing- I'm not
Bell
doing-
to ass for 4 quarters. What happened to Drake?
I'm not doing that. Trey says my nephew is a college OC and a Bucks fan. He wasn't worried at all after losing Carlton Davis. Injuries. See, I'm telling you, man. There's a Bucks fans that were like, "Good riddance. I'll see you later." And I like Carlton. I'm curious what they do with Carlton. I think that's honestly, boys, one of the. That's something I don't know which way they're going to meet with Ben. Ben. I'm talking so much Ben today. Brad. They're going to meet with Brad this week. I'm curious, what they ask him. I'm sure he'll pull out the same old.
I mean,
You know,
who's gonna be
see what
wanting to pay him a lot of money though? Like he was like good in Detroit while he was here, but the same thing appeared. That would be one guy. No, we just said don't do the injury signings. That'd be one guy, but you bring in more. Like, and you
Yeah,
don't bring
more.
in.
Yeah.
You don't bring in Kendall Vildor. Like, I'm sorry, and this isn't shot. No one like the Maurice Norris or Kendall Vildor should be touching a field on a playoff game, even if injuries are a factor. Like, you should have your team prepared where there are guys better than that with experience in that moment. So that way, if they're in a situation like that, you're not in the same situation you were last year. So bring in Carlton Davis just because he is a guy that can't compete, was this team's best corner last year, has chemistry with the players. I know AG's probably leaving. I hope not. But if he does, you have a guy to build around in that secondary as far as a veteran in that cornerback room. But you got to sign more than Carlton Davis and not just dudes. Like, you got to go get a guy, like a guy that's been there before, whether it's in trades. Like, you can look around the league. Like, I know in San Francisco, I think somebody just said it in the chat, like Travarius Ward, like he's been there forever. That locker room, especially on the defensive side, is falling apart. Doesn't have to be him. But you get my point of saying, go get somebody. DJ Reed, New York Jets cornerback, is a free agent this year. Express out. There's no chance he returns there next year. You go get him. He's not even going to be that much because he's on the back end of his career. He's probably going to cost a good amount, but that's something that I think would be worth the money. But then you go draft somebody or go acquire somebody else because you got Terrion, you got Rakestraw, but they need to do that to the quarterback room and the defensive end room.
Can I be honest too? Like, I'll say this: like, if if Carlton Davis is like towards the cheaper end, which he potentially coming off an injury, like obviously it's a jaw injury, but like if you can get him on a good deal and you have him back and you have Terrion back, and I say there's still like go get DJ Reed. Like, in my opinion, I think building those rooms, like you've seen it around the NFL, you've seen it with the linebacker room, you've seen it kind of with the safeties when you had CJ Gardner-Johnson and you already had Brian Branch and you already had Kirby Joseph, and they're like, all right, and you had Iffy, and they're like, all right, we're going to still go get CJ Gardner-Johnson. To me, it's more so of like, get guys in there to compete. Like, if you go in there next year with one guy in front of Terrion and then a Meek, or like you have no one really behind him, all right, like, what's Terrion competing for? Like he wasn't great this year. You probably give him a C. We're going to do our grades later, but you don't give him a great rookie year grade. And you're sitting there and you're like, he needs to compete. Like, you need to get him to play his highest level. And yeah, he's going to get better. But to my opinion, like, you bring Carlton back and you go get another corner and you make Terrion compete. You make Carlton compete. You make guys go compete. And guess what? If it doesn't work, now you know what he's really like, and now you know how these players are, and now you have the best of the best. They show up and they play, and at the end of the day, if there's an injury, guess what? You have that third guy ready to go, right? Like, that's how I look at it.
Boone, it doesn't have to be. We could talk about it more, but if there's like an off-season path, like talk about like dream destinations for like trade candidates, can I give you one?
Yeah. We do have to have the Booner Path conversation at some point.
Yeah, well, we'll have it, but one to offer up.
It was bad this year.
We were just talking about Jim Schwartz in Cleveland, but Brad, go get you Denzel Ward. Go get you a guy like that. Like, if you can go get a proven cornerback on the outside, Denzel Ward, man-to-man corner, is the last thing from a locker room issue. Buckeye, proven Buckeye, national championship winning Buckeye. You bring him to the 3-1-3. A guy like that is perfect for what this defense needs. And that's if you have Denzel Ward and Aiden Hutchinson, again, doesn't have to be Denzel Ward, but a guy like that and Aiden Hutchinson with Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, and Meek Robertson, that's a Super Bowl caliber defense. With two safeties in the middle of that, with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, good night. Nobody's throwing on that.
What about I see people, and by the way, shout out Streams Only. Thank you for the $5 to Speakeasy doing 10 reps of Mongolian throat sings on it.
Jeez. Is Easy still watching?
Streams Only. I had to read it. It's a super chat. All right.
Yeah, super chat.
Appreciate you, brother. Easy just caught a stray there. Love you, Easy. Easy D says, tried to tell you all about Zadarius. And I saw someone, if you cut Zadarius, I think you save like $8 million. I'm gonna be honest, and I think I know where you guys are at. I like Zadarius. I honestly, I think it wasn't fair to him that he got brought in here to be like the savior at like 33 years old. Yeah. I think with Hutch, he'll be fine.
He was the Sheed, remember they called him. They called him the
Sheed. Yeah.
I think that's, I don't know if it's like obviously the playing level, but like if you have him with Hutch, he can be the Sheed. Like that's where I'm thinking. It's like if you have a full defense, that's like yes, that's your like Rasheed Wallace. It is, but it's like for him to be the main guy on that defensive line. Right? It's like, hey, that's just not like you're looking for a star. You're looking for like everyone wanted Max Crosby, and they're like, oh, Zadarius Smith, and everyone's like, be like Max Crosby, be like Hutch, be like Myles Garrett. Like it was never gonna happen. Never. He's gonna have more production, I bet you, next year if he stays. Like $8 million isn't that crazy to me. For a guy like him, pick that up, take him for another year, and go win a Super Bowl with him. That's in my opinion.
I think it comes down to, and obviously it doesn't have to be like this, but I would rather I think the two guys that I question the most returning that could actually contribute are Iffy and Zadarius. I think both those guys annually will probably cost the same amount. Iffy, I'd assume a little bit more long-term, but even like that 8-9 year, like I still think that's a substantial amount when you're in a win now team that could add a veteran offensive lineman, etc. So I would give Zadarius that money, but then by like default, like I'm not paying a guy like Iffy. Like I'm not going to go out there and pay those type of guys. Like Emmanuel Mosley, no way in hell. Like Marcus Davenport, hit the road, because you still need to bring somebody else in besides Zadarius Smith. Like get Zadarius Smith, go get fucking Sam Hubbard, like Boone brought up earlier.
That'd be
I'm sorry, it's Jack Sawyer, Sam Hubbard. I'm thinking of the
I didn't know what you meant, because someone asked the question too.
Jack Sawyer, though, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Lee and Klotzy, Jack Sawyer, Detroit Lions.
I made a
I
statement
would love
today.
but that's somebody where you're gonna have to move up to get, because especially when this dude runs at the combine, like he's a fucking athlete. He's gonna be a top 15 pick. Lions, you're sitting in the back
Yeah,
8
it's
picks
gonna
of the
be.
draft. But that's like a move. Like, go do it. Like, what do we do? Like, look at what that does for your franchise. You're gonna have to pay that guy to be your defensive end too. And it's like, okay, we've moved up for Broderick Martin. We've moved up for like guys like that. Like, we moved up for Sione Vaki, Giovanni Manu. Like, go ahead and move up for a guy like him. Jack Sawyer's a fucking animal.
Yeah,
I made a statement on Twitter today, and actually I was surprised. I thought Lions fans would be like, "Yeah, give me Jack Sawyer."
What'd you say?
Lions fans did not like it. That Lions, there was like half a Lions fan. We can read the comments if you want. I mean,
yeah, no. What did you post? What'd you post?
Oh, I said, hey, I'm obviously I hope Ohio State loses by 1 million today, but official statement as a Detroit Lions fan, I would love to have Jack Sawyer on the football team.
And people were like going against that.
We can pull up my tweet if you want to pull it up.
Yeah.
People legit were like, there was like half people who were like, yeah, and the other half of people are just naming other edge rushers who are like going to go top 15. And I'm like, well, I mean, if Klotz, I know Klotz is saying he can move up and get, but like as of right now, you could probably get him in the 20s, like before the combine. I mean, in the combine, it could change. Obviously, it can change, but
even like now, like when you watch that guy, like he ain't no 20th overall pick. Like,
but to your point, Klotz, like you could say that, but it depends on like you look at mock drafts. It depends on how big other players are. Like, let me look at this mock draft real quick. Where's he going? I don't even see him in the first round. He's not in the first round.
When you put that on the screen to freeze it.
What was it?
No, that was.
No, I didn't see. I was.
That's ridiculous.
I know, it's okay. It's okay.
Lions fan in Calgary says he's kind of a perfect edge too, opposite of Hutch. Sawyer can never be a 1, but his high effort sets the edge, good in the run game. Everything Dan Campbell likes. He likes JT too.
I don't see the like can't be a 1. Like JTT was supposed to be that guy, and it's Jack Sawyer.
I just saw what it was.
Like, if you watched him throughout, like he's a monster in the run game. He's a monster at getting to the quarterback, and he gets his hands up and swats down. He's literally everything you want in a defensive end. Like I'm telling you, this guy will be a top 15 pick without a doubt. I'll lock it in.
Without a doubt. I mean, he's not even projected, I don't think, to go in the first round.
Yeah, James Pierce. I saw James Pierce is a beast too. That dude.
Again, Klotz, I think in some drafts, maybe you can make that point. I just think, like, depending on other position groups, then
it's such a weak draft. Like, even if like maybe in some drafts, like in the past, like there's
a lot of offensive linemen again.
No, honestly,
offensive tackles. There's only a couple offensive.
There's not a lot of offensive tackles.
I'm looking at this mock draft. There's just there'll be a lot of offensive linemen. There's a bunch of them here.
Who are you reading?
Pull this up.
I listen to the GOAT Mel Kiper. All right.
Quarterback, edge, quarterback, athlete, Travis Hunter. They have
athlete.
Mason Graham, D line, McMillan from Arizona, Klatz's guy. Offensive tackle. Let's see here. Maybe I'm looking at. Oh, you know what happened over here, boys?
What happened?
I kept seeing DL, and I thought it was saying OL.
There's a lot of defensive linemen, but
so dumb, dude. Like this guy, Derek Harmon from Oregon, DL. I thought he looks like an offensive lineman, dude. I swear.
Yeah, they got.
There's a lot of interior defensive linemen.
The LSU tackle. What's the LSU tackle? Will Campbell.
Will Campbell. He's projected 7th overall. Will Johnson, Michael Williams from Georgia, James Pierce, edge from Tennessee, Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M defensive lineman, Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren, Malachi Starks, Jalen Walker, edge, Derek Harmon, defensive lineman, Tyler Booker, offensive lineman, a safety, a wide receiver, Colston Loveland, Emeka Egbuka, another offensive lineman, another offensive lineman, another offensive lineman, another offensive lineman, edge, offensive lineman, offensive lineman.
What are we even doing?
Yeah, we get the point.
I'm just saying, like, towards the back of the first round, there's like 8-9 offensive linemen, and there's no Jack Sawyer.
Don Burr, appreciate the $2. Says Josh McCown for OC. He's the Vikings quarterback coach.
Yeah, I think he's taking a lot of interviews. I think he actually interviewed for some head coaching positions.
Truth Teller, I love truth telling, man. He says it's crazy that you guys are talking draft right now. What a waste of a season.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. I will say though, as we kind of digest and process this loss, like moving forward in the next couple of weeks, we're going to live stream the Super Bowl. We're still going to have content, but we're going to that combine. Okay.
Yeah,
we're going to that combine. We are going to have the most thorough, detailed, entertaining / informative draft coverage in this state. Okay.
By the way,
content. I cannot wait for it. We're bringing back mock draft Mondays.
Yep.
Like it's going to be great. We're going
to be doing interviews at the combine. We're working on getting interviews. Probably not live interviews, but we're going to record interviews with some hopefully some big time people. We might get credentialed.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say it's 100%, but I got an email today, and there's a chance we're credentialed. And we could really cover the combine at that point. Then we can really bring the content to the people.
We're going to be able to tell you what these prospects eat for breakfast. We're going to be dialed in. All right, we're going to know.
I don't know about
everything.
that.
No,
let them eat their breakfast in peace.
No.
Well, hey, Boone, remember? Where do we want Starbucks? Remember?
Starbucks. And you know what? This year, I'm not.
Gamble, remember?
Yes, this year, now that we've been there, we're going a day earlier. Actually, last year we were only there for 2 days. We're actually going to double the time. We were there last year for like a day, and we left like the next morning. We're now going to be there like Thursday to Sunday. Like we missed Thursday, Friday last year. We just went for Saturday, basically. We're going to be there all weekend covering all of the positions. Everyone. I'm going to be up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I'm going to go shake hands with head coaches, coordinators, and scouts.
You do it, Boone.
I will be there. Now that I know that all those people are there, we're there. We will be there, and I will be there every morning. And at night, I'm going to different social events. Like, hey, we're locked in. I can't wait.
Hey, you know what I might have? You know what I might pull out? The stopwatch. I might have my own stopwatch out there. Honestly,
I think
hold on.
That's crazy.
Time 4-3-1.
I think back in the day, that's a good move. When you're in the stadium, dude, when you're in the stadium, there's timers everywhere.
No,
like
I don't trust any time, but the one
they literally have sensors on them. They
technology.
I don't trust
lasers.
Technology doesn't. Nope.
China could be controlling those lasers for all you know. At the end,
I don't trust you.
Manual,
I don't trust
manual stopwatch. I'm gonna have that.
Stop.
I'm gonna have. Yeah, I leave it going. I'm like, wow, this dude's slow as shit.
That's like. Yeah. Like Jack Shorter just ran a 5.6. It says like 4.5 up there.
Yeah.
You're posting it on Twitter, like you holding the stopwatch in front of him right under his time.
I cannot wait, man. It's gonna be that's gonna be good.
It is so depressing right now that we're talking about the combo. This is so depressing.
I know I'm at like a pull right now because I love the draft, but I'm so pissed off and heartbroken at the same time. So I'm like battling this feeling of like
we were supposed to have
and then Ben Johnson gets announced today. Like what a 48 hours.
Couldn't even waited a little bit longer, like to after the Super Bowl to kind of give us like, all right, this is what we got to do now. Like
it didn't even process until like this morning. I think for me, we were supposed to go to the Super Bowl, like not the line. Like we were gonna go.
No, we were gonna go down.
Like we had plans to go and make content, and I have to cancel like some things on my end now.
I saw so many people have to cancel their flights, man. There's so many people that have already paid for tickets and got like John Macaroon, the doc. He had his flight bought.
Hopefully, he got flight insurance.
Knowing the doc,
he's prepared.
Honestly, if I already had the flights and we already like we're completely locked in, I would be like, I'm just gonna go. I don't even care. It's probably
Boone goes down there with the Kool-Aid, like, and he's just like, it's like he dumps it on like the.
I would just go down as a normal person, make some content.
Who's your team in the offs now, Boone? Who you want to
win? Josh Allen, the Bills, 100%. Like my dream, I think going forward, the dream for me would be Commanders Bills.
I would want Eagles Bills, and just simply because I want to see the Eagles think they can do it again and then lose. Like I want the Eagles to suffer.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Whoa, hold up.
I thought Jeff was frozen.
Shout out. Come on, Josh.
Shout out Josh, man. What a legend.
Oh, Josh, man. He says, thank you, fellas, for showing up when shit doesn't go our way. More than I could say for other Lions shows. We go through the good and bad together. Keep grinding. Side note, all I keep thinking about is that 3rd and 1.
3rd and 1. Oh, my God.
And
by the way, shout out Josh, too. Like, we're always, and I'll say this, we'll always keep it real. Like, and people like Booner, you're a slappy. Now, if things go bad, I'm going to let you know about it.
Yeah, Josh,
we're going to let you know about it. I will say this too.
We appreciate you, Josh. That's big. That's awesome. Very blessed.
3rd and 1 was tough. That was.
But Josh is right.
And, the 3rd one, like that whole time, David Montgomery's in that drive. It's like hand it to Jameer. You're getting a first down. Like it's literally. Yeah. It seemed like every time it was 11, 12 yards. The best player on the offensive side of the ball, outside if you want to say Penei Sewell, is sitting on the sideline with Jameer Gibbs. Like that dude's the top 2 running back in the NFL. People like Caleb, and I don't even hate him for it, are saying that he's better than Saquon. Do you ever see the Eagles shy away from handing the ball to Saquon Barkley? And I understand that David Montgomery is there and he's a good running back, but Jameer Gibbs is there. Like it shouldn't be, well, Jameer Gibbs, very good, but David Montgomery's coming back from injury, so we gotta give him the ball. No, you got to go win the game. You're going to do that with Jameer Gibbs.
Yeah. The mindset, and I'm going to say this when it comes to that, and we were having conversations today about like, oh, well, they've gone empty on 3rd down all year, like, or the 4th and 1. Like, I went back and watched that touchdown pass to Jameer, the 4th and 1. Like, yeah, you probably want him to hand it off. Jameer's in the backfield. Defense has to account for him. Like, you have to account for the run. You have to load the box. Guess what? Gibbs out of the backfield, catches a pass for a touchdown. Like, I just think like having like the empty is what really did it. But I mean, I'm watching some of these games, like college games, NFL games, and these guys are bringing up good points. Like, and I hate listening to Tony Romo. Hate it. I don't. That dude cannot stand the guy.
I agree with that.
But his point every time it was 3rd and 1 with the Eagles or the Rams was, hey, run the ball, do the tush push. If you don't get it the first time, you have 2 tries to get 1 yard. That's like, and then you hear Dan after the game is like, well, our thought process is if you throw the ball on 3rd and 1 and you go out there and make a play, worst case scenario, it's 4th and 1, you can run the ball then. It's like, dude, why not just try and get the first down the way you know you can get it, and then you can start throwing it out 1st and 2nd. And that's just me. And I hope next year maybe that's something that a new OC, maybe that's something that's under discussion. But like adding a tush push or something, like, so all right, let's get the first down and then we'll deal with the rest after that. But like, you have to get a first down. Why are you empty trying to make a big time play? That's just my thought process. It's like, you don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, I still can't get over Josh just dropping a 50 bomb on the boys. I mean,
that's crazy.
Hey, Josh, you're the man, dude. Appreciate it so much.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's incredible. Trey says, Jeff, you should have heard screaming and walking off the set, having a complete meltdown. I don't know if you're asking me, Trey, you should have heard who. You left out, like, who did that? Who did that? I want to know. Are you saying I should do that? Because I'll fucking do it. All right. Which one is it, right?
Did someone do that?
Did someone do that today? Oh, Lions Syndicate. Come on, Derek.
No.
What's going on? What happened? I gotta talk to him. I'll message him.
Yeah, we got to reach out. Or I gotta go watch
what happened. What happened? What happened today? I didn't see it. I haven't really. I mean, you guys would know better than we do what's happening.
Maybe he did a watch party and it was during that. I don't know, during the game.
I won't. If it is, I wouldn't blame that man.
Yeah, that game, like, I had a headache because I was like trying to not scream the whole time. Like, I was just like trying to, because I didn't want to be like, the game's over, because it didn't set in till like even after the game that like they just lost that. Like, there was, and Booner said this, you said the same thing. Like, there was no world where I saw that game being lost.
No, I told my family like on Sunday yesterday when I was watching football, I told them, I said, I just like typically, like, especially like our business, like you always have to have different angles and know like, hey, if this happens, approach it this way. If this happens, approach it. Like, you always have to like think like that and think on your feet a little bit and have, be prepared a little. There was not the last week or even the 2 weeks because you had the week off. There was not a moment in my head where I was like, okay, if they lose, how are we, like, what are we going to do for a show? What's the post? It just did not cross my mind at all. And that was where I think that was what's the most shocking of it. I almost had it crash out when I was off camera. That was when I got a headache too. Like, I threw my phone. Jeff looked at me and said, "Oh, it's just like Goff is in the medical tent. They're like walking around so slow. It's like,
yeah."
Well, it started like slowly becoming a reality. And then it was like it started hitting us like as the game went on. Like, I think we were still in denial that they were going to
Jeff and I were arguing off air, and it was just like, I don't even think we were arguing about anything. It was just we were so
That JMO pick is when it was like,
Yeah.
Like
No, that's it.
You're having Jameson Williams out of all people, and it's not even like towards JMO, but like again, you're having Jameson Williams out of all players throw it in that situation.
Boys,
I don't hate
I
the
want to say
play, but not that one.
I want to say before we end the show, on the support we've been getting over the last couple of days. I know it's been a terrible ending of the season, but we are blessed. It's been awesome for the support. Obviously, the loss sucks, but the post game show, the amount of people that showed up, even the opponent fans, you had Eagles fans throwing money at us to talk shit. Like, it was all good fun. It sucks. They are allowed to do that after what happened. But that post game show was such a fun. It was not a fun, but it was such like it was an interesting experience. It was something we've all never experienced before, and we were together doing it on this channel. It was something special in a way. It sucks, but it was just different. And I think all the boys, we had like a come together, like, hey, locker room. It was an experience for the fellas, a learning lesson. And man, that post game show was venting with Lions fans was so much fun. It was.
I got off of
getting it all out.
The boys kept looking over at me and saying, "Booner, you want to hop on?" And said, "I just don't think I can do this."
It was awesome. It sucked, but at the same time, it was like just getting all that shit out after it was good. Yeah. And shout out to Doc because he joined the post game show as well. And shout out to Kory for joining today, and appreciate all you guys for joining the show today. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. to break it all down, talk more. We got the Doc joining Wednesday. We have plenty to get to today, man. More about the game, more about
we have another guest Wednesday too, boys.
And we have a huge guest joining the show this week. National guy, never joined the show before. So we'll get to that. Stick around. Big things coming. Appreciate you all. I think we're about 50 away from 12K, fellas. About 50 or 40, actually.
Subscribe.
So 40 away from 12K. We will catch you all. Have a great night. And go Lions.
Love you guys.
Peace.